Chris Naganuma, Project Leaflet.
How you doing?
Welcome to the podcast, bro.
Thanks, man.
So pumped to have you here.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here. It's going to be a good one.
Yeah, we got an awesome, fun turn and burn from Colorado, getting into the studio. But yeah, man, I'm so glad you got on.
Thanks. Appreciate it. It was a good flight. I'm here. It's going to be fun.
Yeah, it was going to be fun. No, we were just talking right before we started recording. I was like, this is going to be a fun one. We're just going to talk shit, go over stuff, fun little bit of, the fixer side of things and the other side of, I don't say the other side of war, but like the movements and what's going on in Ukraine and all sorts of fun stuff.
Yeah.
The
weird side of it.
The weird side of it, yeah. The Lord of War side of it, the gray muddled side of it. But yeah, man, thanks for coming on. So we'll just fire it off. I mean, you got some fun stuff that we've talked about already, but we'll kick it off. Why'd you join the Army? Where'd you grow up? Why'd you join the Army?
Yeah. So I grew up in Los Angeles, Eagle Rock area, which is in between Glendale and Pasadena. And really big reason I joined the military was I was a fucking piece of shit kid. I was not a good kid. Man, got arrested twice in the same week, and I was still in continuation high school at the time because I was kicked out of the Eagle Rock High School. Not a good kid.
That's continuation high school.
It's where they suspend you enough times that they literally remove you from high school, and they're like, but you have to attend some type of schooling in order to continue on with your life. Mm-hmm. So they send you to this like secondary school where all the bad kid goes, and that was me, continuation school. And I remember coming downstairs one day with preparing my dad liked to watch the news and have like a cup of coffee before he got his day going. And so I would wake up, get that started, turn on the news, watch the second airplane impact. Mm-hmm. And I was like, whoa, what's going on? And so that really was kind of like I guess the key got put in the ignition. And then once I started looking into it more, then it fully turned and the engine was started, and that kicked it off.
Yeah. What'd you get caught doing? I think we've talked about this before.
Man, dude, I was a hustler from a young age. There is this college called Occidental College that was right next to Eagle Rock High School. Mm-hmm. Shout out to anyone that went there. I apologize if you went there
for
these years. And I would go through during the cycle was I would go to high school. I would attend first grade, and that would be PE, so I'd get a workout in. Mm-hmm. Right after first grade, it would be homeroom, so they would check you in as attendance. You're there for the day. Immediately skip out on high school and go to Occidental, and I would take emblems off the back of cars. Take the emblems off of them, the little Mercedes or whatever it was.
So these were legit. I mean, I remember back in the 2000s, that was kind of a big deal, or even the 90s. I remember, so these were rich kids. They were Hondas or
any of them.
Or any of them. Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'd hit the whole college,
okay.
The whole parking lot, and then I would come back during lunch, and I would sell all these emblems to the Mexican kids that were in the Los Angeles school district, and they would glue them to their backpack. And so this was my first understanding of kind of supply and demand.
Yeah.
Where I was like, these stupid kids are gluing a Honda Civic emblem to the back of their JanSport for $40. I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna go get 800 of them. I'll be right back. Mm-hmm. And so that was kind of the stop off, and then I ended up getting caught doing that. Don't do that, kids. That was not good.
Yeah. The ROI, not so good on that.
Not so good at the end. Yeah.
So then you did that, and then it was you saw 9/11 happened, and what's kind of the impetus, or the trail then to get into the Army, or what was that?
It was pretty quick. I had noticed the towers got hit, and my dad had a conversation with me about it, and then I think a lot of us remember going to the school the next day or the same day, and there was a lot of confusion and asking, your teachers what's going on, and they had a lot of confusion. They didn't know. And I remember growing up that I wanted to be this fighter pilot, and then I realized getting older that it wasn't really something that I was interested in because it was so separated. It wasn't gun on gun, pilot on pilot. And so when 9/11 happened, it was really okay, well, I want to fight, or I want to at least be involved in it in some regard of this seemed like a kickoff point for the United States and for my age range. And so I went and reached out to a recruiter. My dad brought me down to the Army remember they had these big centers where it was like, you know, all 4 or 5 like branches were inside of it.
Yeah.
And so I went and talked to a couple of different branches, predominantly Army and Marine. And I ended up landing on Army side. And from there, I went into a delayed entry program. My birthday was November 3rd. I signed out November 7th and graduated March, I think, 26th. And I was in Iraq October 28th.
No shit.
So less than a year.
So this was like 03. Did you graduate March 03?
03.
Okay,
Yeah.
so like
and I was in 04.
Oh, okay, all right, got it. Yeah. So you were like, okay, so you're like,
Yeah, so from time to sign, time to train, time to get to my unit, time to hit the desert.
yeah.
11 months.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was fast.
That's good shit.
Yeah, I was very excited.
Yeah. Was your dad pumped about that? Like, thank God he's joining. Joining
with this
fucking
piece
art.
of shit kid, man. He's like,
guys,
he's like, he was so pissed off at me, dude. Like, I remember when I got caught for those emblems.
Yeah, I'd imagine.
The cop was standing outside of my door, and he's like, "Yeah, your son's here. He messed up." And I could hear my dad on the phone being, "Leave his fucking ass there." And I was like, "Oh." And now I was like, I'm in trouble now.
Yeah.
Like,
I'm in real trouble now.
So, and I needed that. I think, you know, the Army really gave me a lot of direction, and being around guys that were, I had my 19th birthday in Iraq, in Mosul, shooting like at the Syrian border, and I think having those guys around me, which were my team lead, my squad lead, they were like mid, 20s, and so much more of, I guess, a leadership or like a father role that I really needed at that point, than my own father, because sometimes you just need someone else that like kind of like takes you out of what you're normally doing, smacks you around, and it's like, hey man, no, you need to be doing this, not that. And so that really helped put me into a good path for the rest of my life.
Yeah. What unit did you go to, or how was that, or where'd you go?
25th Infantry. Right? Yeah. So I went to the 25th Infantry, 1st to the 25th, and then 321 Stryker. Jaded me for the rest of my life because it was a good unit from the top down at that time. 2nd Ranger Battalion was there on Fort Lewis with us, and they had a lot of guys that during that time frame we were hiring, I guess you would say, or recruiting a lot of guys from the military, all branches, right? And so the Marines got really big, and not the Marines, the Rangers got really big, but they're not really a huge organization. So there's all these guys that had time in slot that needed to get time in next slot that couldn't do it inside of the Rangers. So they ended up falling to the Stryker brigades. And so most of the guys, when I got to my unit, anyone that was like an E1 to E4, most of us had gotten orders right out of basic and then fell into the Stryker brigades because they had just got stood up. Most of the guys that were E5, E6, E7, a lot of those dudes came from Ranger Bat because they were getting promoted up in Ranger Bat, but there were so many guys coming in that there was just no slot time for them. So they fell to the Stryker brigades. And then when they ended up leading Stryker brigades, it was completely different than conventional military because they were so used to the way that the Ranger tempo was. That's kind of how it worked for us when we went into Mosul. It was just kind of a different tempo. And it was a lot more fun.
I was gonna say they're probably wanting to really get into it, hard hitting.
Yeah, man. It was, no one had ever seen a Stryker before. Hummers, they're going 30, 40 miles an hour. Like Bradleys are going probably the same, and they're super loud. Stryker shows up, and you've got this 8-wheeled vehicle that's going 60 to 70 miles an hour. You can throw a propane system into the turbo and make it go faster. There was ways of modding it. And you've got Ranger guys that are just like, they don't care. They're going to do what they want to do. And they've got this super fast truck that they can go hunt, and it's quiet. It was fun. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah. The Strykers, I remember seeing, we call it, they were Strykers for the Marine Corps, but they were the LAR. We call it light reconnaissance vehicles or whatever.
Yeah, a little bit different.
A little bit different, but they were kind of the same concept. It was like 8 wheels or whatever, and they had the gyroscope system and all, or whatever, like for the guns.
Yeah, because we didn't have a big gun like the Lav guys and like the LARs had. Like you guys had, I think, like a 20 or a 25.
Something like that.
that.
The Bushmaster.
Yeah, we only had 50s, Mark 19s, some medic units.
So it was basically just kind of the vehicle itself, opposed to like, you got having the munitions in the turret.
Yeah, when the Stryker first got kind of created, it was meant to be like an all-inclusive system. Besides, at the time, I don't think we had any anti-air assets, so that was something that we needed on the outside. But the Stryker was meant to kind of be like okay, here's the chassis. We can create a medic unit out of it. We can create a 50 caliber out of it, a Mark 19. We could throw a tow gun on top of it. So it was kind of like we felt somewhat special, I guess you could say, because I didn't have to call up someone else to like blow a building down. Like I already have a tow dude with me, and no one could keep up with us. So we were so fast. You felt kind of like different.
Yeah. So what was it? All right. So then, I mean, it sounds like a fun kinetic deployment.
2004 Mosul was pretty kinetic.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So like, what was your first days on ground? What was that first firefight? What was that like? That feeling? Like I remember my first time getting shot at. The excitement, you're like, what's going on? What's that feeling going in, man? Because we can definitely like go into like your deployment in Mosul in 04, because that's a significant time, that was kinetics, all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
There's a couple of moments that are like, will always stand out to me. First week, getting off the bird when we landed in Mosul, we got to our fob, and I remember the first night, it's pitch black dark, and you're like looking out into Iraq, and all you see is just tracers like shooting up into the air, and you're like, holy fuck, like I'm going to that. Like that's holy shit. That's a moment that I'll never forget. And we had done a support by fire where some M&P guys got military police got hit by a small arms ambush. We went there to support them and back them up and just really like kind of just be a show of force. And I was a saw gunner at the time through most of my career in Mosul. And so if you're a saw gunner, you're generally up out of the truck in an air guard position. And I remember rolling up on them. It was day, and I'm looking at the middle truck. There's a Hummer to my left and a Hummer to the right, and there's a middle truck, and there's a couple of dead Iraqis. And I'm listening over this conversation with the M&Ps. And they're talking about like, hey, like we got to get the bodies in these bags, throw them on top of the hoods, which is what we did at the time. And one of the other sergeants was like, well, what do you want to do with the brains that are all over the place? And his response was like, dead ass looked at him, and he's like, fuck them, the dogs will eat it. And I was like, welcome to fucking Iraq, man. So that was definitely like, an awake, I guess, like check, on the board, like, oh shit, you're not in Kansas anymore, Chris.
Yeah.
So that was it. And then there was a couple of big firefights that I have on my Army awards. One of them that I like was a huge moment for me, and like I give a lot of credit to. I think he's like a 3-star now. At the time he was Colonel Brown. And we didn't have a lot of drones at the time when this engagement was going on back in like 2004. We had like what do we call them, the Blue Falcons. You like pulled them out of a tube and the wings opened up. You had to run real fast and toss them. 98% of the time they crashed. Like generally right outside the wire.
Blue Falcons is a buddy fucker. But I know what you're talking about.
I think it was a Raven or something
Raven.
like that.
I think it was a Raven. Blue Falcon. We call the Blue Falcon buddy fuckers.
Because it always crashed. And then you have to go get the damn thing.
We're the same way all the time. They're like, it's sensitive equipment. And then you like,
sure it is.
And then you look at it and it would cost like $100 at like Hobby Lobby to like put together.
Piece of shit. But it was the first like aspect of like a reconnaissance drone, and it was something that was new to us. And we did this QRF mission that was into, I think the town was called Palestine at the time. It was a really dangerous city, and we had a Stryker team that went in, and Palestine was like a 2-way road, big marketplace. And so they had gone in, hit an IED, and broke the front axles of the Stryker. And so for those that don't know, a Stryker is an 8-wheeled vehicle. The first two axles control the wheels, so the 4 tires actually steer. And they had snapped both of the front axles, so the truck couldn't really go anywhere. We got called in to get off of our mission to go help pick them up. And there's this huge like soccer field where the trucks are just like sitting out in the middle of it. And so we pulled in, and I remember hooking these trucks up, and our drivers are like, it's going to be really hard to get out because we're dragging this truck with wheels that are kind of like on the inside. So you're dragging these like 58-inch rubber wheels the whole way out of Palestine. Colonel Brown kind of came over the radio with some of his teams that they had a drone over the top. and that the whole entire city had kind of vacated, and there was a very large group of individuals that were ready to like kind of ball with us. And so as we hooked up and pulled out, it was one of the largest firefights of like our entire engagement trying to get out of this. And I just remember being a brand new like 19-year-old kid sitting on the inside of the Stryker, and I was all the way up inside of the like all the way inside of the truck. So when a Stryker ramp comes up, you know, you pack it all the way in. At the time, there was large bench seats. Mm-hmm. They've since changed the design of the truck. And so I was all the way on the inside of the truck next to another saw gunner. I don't remember why, but our team leads were up in the hellholes, which they just had rifles at the time. And when the fighting started, it was Sergeant, or he might have been Corporal Santana at the time, dude that I give like everything of who I am today to this guy. Mm-hmm. He definitely was a team lead that like shaped who I am. And I remember vividly the fighting starts, RPG comes flying down and like shooting shoots, and Santana like pops his head down and he's like, holy fuck, they're shooting at us. And we're like, yeah, no shit, start shooting back.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of like this surreal moment, you know, because like even though you're expecting it and you're training for it, you're just kind of still like, oh shit, like it's happening. Like now it's happening. And so they started pounding off rounds, and it very quickly like became a realization that we needed more things than M4s up there. Mm-hmm. And so Santana came down and they were like, hey, we need a saw gunner up. I looked over to the other saw gunner who was Hacker at the time, and I was like, I'm not letting him go up this fucking hole.
You're fighting for
like I'm fucking fighting for this hole.
Yeah.
And so Santana came down, and I pushed Hacker out of the way, walked up my happy ass in between everyone, and as soon as you get up out of the hole, it's like there's just dust going on, muzzle flashes are going everywhere, and we're driving at like 50 probably miles an hour or 40 miles an hour, dragging this other truck that's burned down, trying to go as fast as you physically can. And I just remember ripping out my nutsack and putting, which is like a soft container for an M249, you know, carries like 100 rounds. Ripped out my nutsack, and I was like, the most common sense thing at this point in time is like, everyone started leaking me fucking ammo. And so guys just started like trying to link up ammo and just keep the trigger pulling. And that was kind of like an experience of like, holy fuck, like this can be real. Like there's a lot of dudes that really don't like us here. And so that was a big eye opening. There's a lot of those moments where those dudes have been there for a lot longer period, you know, than you have. So you're just another dude coming to their country to fuck around for a little while, I think.
Yeah. So that was like a pretty big firefight. Like, did you just keep your finger on the trigger then the whole time? Just
as much as I could.
Ripping?
Yeah, I ended up getting a nice award from, his name was Sergeant Myers, who was our platoon sergeant. He came back after the mission and gave me like 1,800 more rounds. And he's like, you're the only saw gunner fucking shooting it, so here's your ammo. And that was kind of like the step off point from my point in that deployment. And ended up getting a couple other kills with the saw, the 240, and really wanted to like get placed on a 50 cal because I wanted to like do a trifecta. But it was not it wasn't my role to be like a crew serve guy. Like 240 was as big as I was ever going to get.
Yeah. Let's go into that.
Yeah, 240.
240 kills, man.
240 kills.
Yeah. Iraq, Mosul, 2004. Let's get into it.
I had ended up doing really well on the SOF through most of my career through that deployment, and I really, really enjoyed that platform. Like the gun worked well.
The saw.
Yeah, the saw.
Yeah, people shit on the saw. Like it chews, you know, like I don't say you take care of it a little more, but I've had no issues with saws.
I've never had an issue with
Love
my saw.
ripping saws.
My saw was really good. Like anytime I pulled the trigger, it wanted to shoot. It went where I asked it to go.
Yep.
And I liked the weight of it because you're shooting a 5.56 projectile. The gun's heavier, but then like you pull it and you're just like, whew.
Yeah. Gets lighter.
Yeah. It's like, and it's going, it's eating. So I enjoyed the saw. That was a good platform for me. I saw the success in the saw, and so I ended up getting transferred into a 240 team. And I think that was unfortunately because of the success I saw out of the saw. I fought that tooth and nail because I didn't like the aspect of like, hey, you need to sit now on a truck. Like the saw was like, I'm in a hellhole. Cool, I'm doing the work. my squad is going to go hit a house. Guess
go
where
with
I
them
go?
in the
I go
house.
with the squad. 240 was a little bit different. And so I got yelled out a lot of the times because I would want to dismount with 240 and still move and go shoot stuff. Well, this one time we got pushed into an AO that was like a big construction or industrial area, I guess you could say. And I was on the back of a 240, on the back of a Stryker, and we got called in to go and investigate a couple of dead bodies that were just magically placed inside of this industrial area. My squad ended up getting off, which was one of the squads that had our E7, our platoon sergeant at the time, Sergeant Myers, and he was next to my medic, Doc Mooney. And they had walked down to go check and investigate the body. And I was kind of sitting back like this, looking over this huge grass field. My doc and my platoon sergeant were off to my left, standing over this dead body that was covered in cardboard. And they were just kind of talking amongst each other. The rest of the guys were doing a perimeter. And we had each Stryker, I guess you could say, parked as like a cross. You know, one's facing north, south, east. And the guns were facing out. The back gunners were facing in. So I was facing in. I think I was possibly looking north. And I started to notice that there was a couple of little heads that were moving around the top of this building. And I thought it was kind of weird just because we had Kiowa assets that were flying around the top. And so you knew that the Kiowas could probably see what the hell was going on. So to be kind of moving around on top of a roof while you have air assets that are looking to like kill you is kind of, I guess, like a ballsy move. You know, you're kind of taking a chance on that. And I vividly remember seeing a dude in a red shirt and a blue shirt. And at the same time, I remember like looking at them, and they were maybe 100, 200 yards, maybe less. And I was looking over at my doc and my platoon sergeant, and I could kind of just like the wheels, you know, like when you see like the
infantry roll, infantryman wheels start turning.
Man on roof, troop on ground. It's like not good, right?
Yeah.
And so I kind of like I'm smoking a cigarette, and I like flick it out, and I get kind of behind the 240, and I'm like, I have a what do you call them? It's like a scissor mount, or it's like
it like helps stabilize.
It stabilizes the 240. It's full metal. You can move it around.
Yep.
Forget the actual like name. But I unpin this thing, and I'm like, I move the 240, and I get behind. I think I was using the first generation L-can at the time, which was like that. I think it was a fixed 4-power.
Yeah, we had those. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I could see this like wall that was concrete that went around it. So I could see the front end of the wall, and I could kind of see like the half end of their head, kind of like looking over the edge. And so I kind of realized, I'm like, okay, well, these guys are interested in what we're doing. And as I'm looking on the glass, the first dude steps up, and he's got an AK. And he pulls the trigger. One round goes off, and I pull the trigger. And the round goes in between Doc Mooney and Sergeant Myers, because Doc tells me about this like all the time when I call him. And I give the first dude a fucking mohawk. Like hits the brick in front of the wall, and like kind of chops open a little bit so I can now see the dude more. And the rounds track from the brick right up his fucking face. And it's like boom, boom, boom. And you just see him drop. Second dude picks up. That's the guy with the blue shirt. Picks up the same or has another weapon. Goes up, and I pull the trigger again. And that ends up striking him 4 times in the right arm, I believe. And it takes most of his segment of his arm off. He's able to drag the dude with the red arm to a hole, and then down the hole and into a truck. There's a drone that was on our air asset that apparently Warmonger was the helicopter guys that were supporting us. They had called in. That drone saw the whole entire action and then followed those guys in a truck. The drone follows that truck, who he tries to drive them to a hospital. But as he gets to the hospital, he starts to bleed out and loses consciousness, crashes, and then gets to the hospital, and then they beat him to death for being a terrorist. And it's like, the fucking world like worked its magic in that little.
He wasn't getting, no matter what, he wasn't
getting out that day. No, it was bad, dude.
That's awesome. No,
And so that's my 240 story. At least of like vividly seeing someone and like watching him pulling the trigger, which is not kind of normal for infantry, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I think too, there in the GWAT, it was like you get shot at a lot, but you didn't see where it was coming from. You know, urban's different. Even Afghanistan's like you're gonna get shot at a lot, but you're in the mountains. Motherfuckers are like 500 yards
all over the place.
They're all over the place. They can be shooting from like a tree, and like they shot through trees. Very smart. You know, it's like you don't even know where it's coming from.
Yeah, and early GWAT was a lot different.
Yeah.
You know, we had guys that like, I mean, we were sitting inside of a tower in one of our cops, and I was sitting with a guy, Harris. I'll never forget. The dude was like one of the funniest motherfuckers I've ever met, dude. Like legit funny. And we were sitting inside of a tower, and we just start getting mortars on, and this car rolls up the road on the freeway. And we're looking at these mortars drop on this farm. And then we look over at the car that's parked next to it, and the dude's got like binos. And he's like fucking calling the shots. And we're sitting there literally in the tower, like watching this whole thing go on. And we smoke 5 dudes in the car. And we're like, are you that fucking stupid? Apparently they are.
Yeah. Well, that's what I heard about the early GWAT days, you know. And then my buddies that were snipers, they're like, yeah, then you killed all the dumb ones. And then they start getting a little smarter.
Yeah, and you know, we did like we did a lot of hunter killer teams like back in the day that really didn't like. I think that was probably a big reason why the civilian population like didn't vibe with what we were doing, because you know the early days we were straight hunting. It's like, hey, put a sniper team, put a 240 team or a SAW team together, go set a trap, go kill them if they take the bait, and we did a lot of that. And so I don't think that vibed too well with like the civilian population when they heard how we were doing stuff. And so that kind of changed the tempo a little bit too at GWAT.
Yeah. Was that like during your deployment, or was that like
we did a lot of hunter killer. That was
how did that work? I've heard about hunter killer teams. I've heard about ones in Afghanistan, but then it's different AOs, different units. You know, I love the term hunter killer. Like we didn't have that in the Marine Corps, and I brought it to a battalion commander once. After my third pump, I'm like, look, we can put these teams together and we'll go off into the mountains and hunt these dudes down. He was all for it, but it's Marine Corps infantry. He's like, we don't have the funds. You guys have, we'd have to go on the deployment to work up.
Yeah, right.
You know, but how did you guys implement that?
Well, Iraq's different. You know, Iraq was a lot different than Afghanistan.
In generality, it's just the hunter killer team. Yeah.
For us, it was a lot of hunting. We do false inserts with our strikers. You know, you could go into a building that you knew that there were some guys that were like in a bad AO. For example, like in Palestine, they would take these telephone poles and they would kind of paint them a color in a certain area, and that was kind of to let the locals know, hey, this is a safe entry point for whoever's gathering there. Well, let's say if we know that, or if we get tipped off that, okay, well, let's go put up a false security camera in that AO. And then we'll put that camera so it's overlooking that painted area that's a safe entry point. Now we'll entry a hunter-killer team to overwatch that type of electronic decoy that is looking at the target area that you want. If they come out and they destroy that equipment, that's a valid target. And that's how you start to do a hunter-killer. And so that becomes a valid target. You kill that individual. Someone comes to pick up the individual, you kill them too. It just starts to create this chain of like, we're going to hunt you. And that worked really, really well because, well, you don't want to get hunted. Like, I mean, you know,
you don't pick the fight.
Right. And it's very proactive. We weren't really like sitting on our heels a lot of the time. Like we were going out and actively kind of conducting our own mission setting or getting information documented through not only the governmental channels that were helping us. We were free to go out and kind of like gather information on our own. But again, people don't like to kind of hear that, I think. Yeah.
That's war.
Look, man, you know, civilian base, they want war to be conducted clean.
Yeah,
right?
It's like,
and like
good guys, bad guys, front line.
Right, and that's not war, man.
No, it's not war.
That's just not it.
Especially the counterinsurgency stuff. Like you're hunting down dudes that are, you know, I'm sure you guys ran into it too, but we ran into that where it was like, you know, you'd smoke dudes and then like the guns are gone. So now they turned into like civilian casualties and then all the war crimes. You're like, no, we have all right here. You know, they take their guns and then it's like especially when it comes to like the psychological, you know, it's very easy to if you're not a uniformed army, it's very easy to play the pity game of, well, they're here, they're hunting civilians,
and they know our rules.
They're committing genocide and all this other shit.
And they know our rules. Like, there was instances of like guys grabbing civilians, throwing an AK underneath their arm, pulling the trigger, emptying a mag at like a convoy going by. And then you drop the weapon, you're no longer a combatant. Mm-hmm. They know the U.S. military can't engage that individual. Mm-hmm. They're not stupid. I mean, these people have been playing this game for as long,
Exactly,
for a long goddamn time.
Yeah. So you guys were doing the hunter-killer teams. Was there one that like really stood out to you that was like, hey, that was great op, bad op, something that went sideways or
In the hunter-killer aspect, I think a lot of that ended up turning into further information that turned into big operations. We were hunting down what the fuck was his name? Zarqawi.
Oh, okay.
That was a big one that we were looking for in 2004, and we had missed him just by a couple of minutes when we had got tipped off. Did an assault on a house, and the T and everything was still going. That was a kind of like a strike to the heart because we knew this piece of shit. At the time, he had video footage of killing U.S. troops, and I'm sure plenty of UGWA guys out there will remember that motherfucker sitting around with a 249 out in the middle of the desert, and he's just like doing bursts with the weapons that he had taken off these dead Americans. And so for us, that was this huge thing because we were involved with Task Force 626. And Task Force 626 was an organization where a bunch of different small teams would come in and try and hunt al-Zarqawi. I think Chris Kyle came in to try and do sniper operations, and all these other units were coming in trying to hunt this dude. And later, I think he got dual tapped with a JDAM. I think is what.
I think we might have been in the AO. We got I think I got like a Navy unit citation because I was like in the AO, but I wasn't a part of it. But they did a blanket unit citation thing for Zarqawi.
Like
I think that was. Is that 06? It was 05. I think that was 06.
It probably was 06 because we were hunting them pretty heavy in 04.
Yeah.
We left October 05, and then I think he was pretty quickly.
I think it was 06 because I was there in March of 06, and I think I do remember them getting him.
Yeah, and they put him into like they captured him in a small building, dropped a JDAM on him, they dropped a second one to confirm. And I was like,
Need that confirmation.
Yeah. Dude's dead. Go ahead, send that second one. It's already queued up.
Yeah, we got plenty in the backlog. Don't worry about it. Yeah. That's awesome. So then, so you guys were doing some pretty significant stuff then in 04 in Mosul. Like intel wise too, and like I said, being big operations. So like, did you? Like you said, that task force 60 is it 66 or whatever? 626.
Yeah.
Did you guys like work with them directly, or was that like it was like SMU guys, like Delta?
No, so we kind of became like this. I guess you could say taxis almost. The initial kind of tempo for the Stryker brigades shifted a lot from what we initially got kind of created for to what the Strikers do today. I'd say back in the day, in that aspect, we were almost like SWIC on land. Most of the small teams had their own mission setting through JSOC or whoever else. But because we were so fast, we could essentially let them hit a mission. We could spin up, we could be outer cordon, and we could get to them, whether with medical assets, heavy assault assets, or infantry guys that wanted to fuck your day up. And we could do it very fast, and probably faster before a rotor could get off the ground and get out to them and get a bird on the ground to get medical out. We could do that with speed. And so because of that, we kind of ended up getting like the knock on the door of, hey man, like we're doing this. Can you come help back us up? And so the tempo there really kind of became of hey, you'll do your tower missions where you're sitting on a fob and you'll sit and you'll watch the AO. You'll get your time off, and then outside of that, it's all mission setting. So whatever mission setting you want to do on your own, which came through our leadership, or whatever mission setting came from JSOC of their missions of support by fire or support element, that's really what we did. And so that year, this is why I say it jaded me so much. It was so like loose and just like this is I had never like lived a year in the Army that was like true like the recruitment video, and that was that year. Where it's like everything's blowing up, like shit's going on, like do you want to be a soldier? And I was like fuck yeah I do, and like
want to keep doing it.
That was it. Like I came back off that deployment and I was like holy shit, like the Army's dope. And then it wasn't. Yeah, then it wasn't.
And then it wasn't. Yeah.
Then it wasn't.
No. So then, like I said, your time in. So you guys did like a full year, correct? Like
12 months.
12 months. Yeah.
Just we were on the 12-month cycle, and then quickly after that, it bumped up to a 15-month cycle for the Army. We didn't get caught in that, and then it bumped back down to 12. 15, has a double-edged sword. You're there for a long time.
Yeah. We were short. We were 7.
I know.
And everyone argued that and I did a 9. And 9 seemed like is like the sweet spot. Like it feels like you're doing enough. Like we were like we got the groove, but we could stay for another few. Yeah. And then I've been guys I've know that done 12 are kind of like, all right, we need to get the fuck out of here. And 15 is like, no, like we need to get the fuck out of here.
I think that's the hard part, right? Is like finding that groove.
Yeah.
I think we argued as the Army when we saw a lot of Marines doing like 6 months. It was like we felt it was hard to hit into that groove because you're breaking into your AO, you're just getting with tribal leaders, you're sitting down, you're building trust. They're getting to know who you are and who you are as a person, and then you pop smoke and then you throw a whole new leadership into it. For us, we thought I really liked the 12-month thing, and I even argued going home for a Christmas leave because I felt like if you stepped out for a month, you kind of just you lost a little bit of connection. You're not really connecting in it full blown. And so I liked the 12-month rotation just because I felt like you were gone for enough time to really kind of to see a change. But you weren't gone like where you didn't feel like you didn't do anything. Like it wasn't short or anything like that.
Yeah.
But 15, I know a lot of guys that just were like, they were having a lot of mental issues, a lot of marital issues. It's just hard, man. Like you're just gone for a long time.
Yeah, it's not how you spin it. It's not
No,
good. Yeah,
it's just not good.
It sucks. Yeah. So you're doing that, and so then like even talking with like the technology in 04, were you guys running much into IEDs then with this? Like, because it sounds like the way you're operating. Not saying you were avoiding IEDs, but did you guys? Because it started becoming it was prominent obviously in 04, but then it becomes real prominent in 05, 06, and you're there in that time frame 04 to 05.
Yeah, so we ended up like fucking knock on wood, but I feel very blessed because I kept having these little windows now that I look back on my life where I'm like, well, that was a lucky window that I was in there. I deployed in 2004 to Mosul, and that was a very, very pinnacle year, I would say, for the Iraqi war. We helped with like the first voting of the entire Iraqi population, and I remember people putting their ink prints on who to vote and put in power. They had never done that before. In regards to IEDs, we at the time during the strikers in that window, this is again where I say I'm glad I had this like lucky window. Most of the IEDs at the time were really remote detonated, and they were large. So like 500 pounders, 600 pounders, put underneath the roads. You'd see these massive explosions. The armored vehicles get flipped over. But at the time, they had never experienced a Stryker yet. They were experiencing a lot of Hummers and Amtraks and stuff like that. And y'all are fucking slow. We come in and all of a sudden you're seeing a 22-ton tank driving at 60 to 80 miles an hour. So then they have cell phones back then, which were, initiated by hitting the button. The signal goes to the detonation. And then all of a sudden you'd hear boom, and we'd look behind, and we'd already hauled ass before that signal got to the explosion. And so their timing of munitions took a long time for them to understand how to impact a Stryker. But I do also think that we were probably one of the main reasons of why pressure switches ended up coming into Iraq.
Were you guys running during the day a lot then too?
Yeah, a lot of day, a lot of night op, because nothing could really get to us. We were just so fast at the time. It was like almost like a shock to them because they just weren't used to it. It just was such a different platform coming into the AO. But again, I think that was a main reason why you ended up seeing pressure switches coming into play, because it was a lot easier to time for a vehicle like us. And we also missed the window of EFPs. It wasn't until the very end that Alaska came into AO, and they got hit by the first EFP I had ever seen. And it went through the left side of the Stryker, killed everyone on the left side of the Stryker. And I was like, what the fuck is that? And then we ended up exiting. So that's that window where I'm like, damn, I missed the pressure switches and I missed the EFPs.
No, that's a good window. Yeah. Because we had a lot of pressure switches, all that kind of stuff, and then it was but remote. It was everything by that time, and then the EFPs started coming into play a little more. We'd heard more about them towards my second deployment. I don't know if we weren't running into them as much. My first pump in 06, I don't remember hearing about them unless they're probably in different AOs. And then going back for my second pump, we had that's all they were talking about was EFPs.
Single EFPs and porcupine EFPs, where they just stack them all over the place.
Yeah, it's wild.
Wild, because you wouldn't need like 2 or 3 or 4 or 500 pounds of explosive.
Yeah,
you just need enough for that copper to form and shoot a spike through you.
Yeah, exactly. It goes all the way through the engine block.
Yeah, they're gnarly.
They're gnarly. Yeah, I think they're actually, aren't they? Doesn't that used for like mining or something like that? I think they're like the original use of just the copper plating
probably
is used for like ground penetration or something like that.
Wouldn't be surprised.
Because exactly.
Well,
yeah. I think that's what they originally used for. I mean, I might be wrong, completely wrong on that, but so you end up doing that. So that was pretty significant time. In 04, Mosul.
Yeah.
Strikers. I mean, it sounds like you said, all that the experience sounds awesome. You know what I mean? Like,
it was good, man.
Yeah, it was good. Yeah, it was good. It's like what you wanted, what you thought war was going to be.
It definitely scratched. It definitely scratched the itch for me of okay, this is what the military is like, and in regards to a combat time. So that scratched the itch for me a little bit back then.
So then you guys get back. You did a year. What kind of goes on from there then?
Yeah, so we came back, and it was kind of a shit show. Guys just didn't understand PTSD or TBI at the time, and there was supposed to be this huge detox. They always talk about it. Oh, you're going to detox with all these other dudes, and never fucking happened. We were supposed to detox with Vietnam vets and have these group therapies and talk about combat. I remember sitting on the runway in Mosul, and then 72 hours later, we're having an award ceremony, and they're like, fucking see you later. And your family's there, and you go out and you have a good time. And that just turned into a shit show of dudes doing coke and shooting people, and it just was all bad, man. Nobody knew how to handle any of this.
No, I know. I know. That's why you grab we had that too.
Yeah, it was all bad, man.
It was all bad. Yeah. We got called back in. All the families came out. And then it wasn't even 12 hours. They called everybody. Everybody back
all right. Oh, Jesus.
Yeah. Because it was the first Iraq pump for 3rd Marines as a whole, as an actual rotation. I think 1-3 had done Fallujah, but they were on a MEU and they got pulled into the Battle of Fallujah, and then they got tore up, and then they got kicked. Yeah, they were go back to the MEU. But as a full hey, we're doing Iraq, and we were the first ones in the beginning of 06, and so we came back and. Yeah, we came back from that, and literally everyone gets recalled because somebody beat up a cop or something.
Oh, dude, there was so much.
They got into a massive fight.
Yeah, dude. We had one dude doing. He had done so much coke that he was driving down the interstate in Washington, and he had a shotgun. He's just shooting at targets out of his thing. We had another dude beat up 4 cops, and then the mental institute sends out stuff to try and talk to him. He beats up 2 more of those guys, and then he runs his ass 15 miles all the way back to base to check himself in. And it's what is fuck is going on? And it was just nonstop. And so that was kind of the reintegration, I guess, experience to start off with. And then it was
we had fun on leave.
It's oh man, probably we'll fix that on the next spin. And then it was I ended up getting changed over units. My unit that I deployed with went to Germany, and so they went on another spin, and I ended up going to another Stryker brigade, stayed at Fort Lewis, and up trained with them, and ended up getting hurt before my second deployment with the Stryker brigade.
Yeah, how were you liking the Army? I mean, I remember you kind of
at the time.
Yeah, at the time you were digging it, right?
Dude, at the time I was loving it. I came back with 25th. I was this is it. I thought this was the tempo that was normal for infantry, and the unit in that company was so tight, man. It was so tight from a specialist to a private all the way up to the colonel. Everyone was so tight and was so hyped about doing this, and it was all about the mission. And then I watched them go to Germany. I didn't get to go with them. and then because of other reasons and like re-enlisting and just a bunch of other stuff. So I went to another unit, which was 4th Stryker, and it was immediately like, holy fuck, this is how bad the Army could be. It was just such a huge shift on leadership, respect, like combat preparation, and the tempo of guys that were getting into the military at that point and not wanting to listen to higher up, or guys that had already been through a cycle or two of like a combat deployment. And it was just like the biggest shit show I'd ever been around. And it kind of was like, that's why I say the 25th jaded me, because I thought that's what like, this is what the Army's like. And then it wasn't. It wasn't like that at all.
Yeah.
It's really
that does suck though, because I think guys think like I've never been I should say fan of the units, but like you kind of like improve on what you do, but like even for me, it's like, oh, this is what combat does, or you want to kind of not say repeat that, but it's like sometimes you just get lucky and like you have an awesome unit. You know, guys are like, "Oh, this is what it's like," and then you get thrown into something else. You're like, "Wow, you're right. This is a shit show." Like,
well, and I think the 25th also kind of had this right timing. We were the 2nd Stryker Brigade ever into Iraq. The 1st Stryker Brigade didn't really see a lot of action, and so us going in, we saw a lot of action. And so I think everyone was kind of like on the same page. You know, we all understood, hey, the country's at war. We're setting the playbook for this unit that's never even been really created before. We want it to be right, and I think that when we ended up getting in, or when I ended up getting into the other unit, that type of motivation wasn't really there, and it was another year into the war. People's mentalities and things start to change very quickly, and I think that started to affect people inside of the unit as well. And it was very, very prevalent, like when you were inside of there. Like, dudes would just be like, you know, you would ask a guy to do something, he'd say no. You try to correct it with hey, do push-ups or something else, just whatever your corrective means would be. And the response back would be like, no, fuck you, like, write me up. And you're like, okay, well, how the hell do I... If a dude just wants me to write him up continuously and he's never going to listen to me, I'm just, you know, this is a problem. And it was a lot of that, like in like 4th and 5th Stryker.
Yeah, we started seeing that. Marine Corps, that was more like 07, 08 when Iraq was calming down
A little bit.
and then Afghan was really kicking off. But it's like in our unit, we were in Hawaii though, so it's like they got, you know, sometimes you're separated from the East and West Coast Marine units, which are much more hardcore. I don't want to say discipline, but probably, you know, like, dude, we have Aloha Fridays.
Yeah,
like,
right. Yeah.
We're like, it's literally like everyone wants to get off work and go to the beach because we
in
have,
Hawaii.
We're in Hawaii. We're like literally like our base is one of the best golf courses and some of the best beach. Like we have a just really beautiful beach. That's like one of the best beaches on the island in Oahu. So it's like, locals hate us, but then some locals are like, let's be your friend, then we can go like surf,
Do whatever we want on your place.
Hey, can you bring us on, because you have to cross the flight line, so it's not even like get on base, go to it, you have to like drive across the flight line to like, so you need like a vehicle to get over to it. But I agree with you. I think getting, you know, it's like having that first experience, especially if it's like awesome right out the gate, or even if it's like war out the gate, like might not be awesome, but you're like, okay, that's what
it was,
you
awesome.
know, yeah. Like some guys will be like, yeah, we got to do a lot, it was terrible, but you know, you're like, that's what that setting that tempo of like what war is. And when you go into something, you know, for me, it was like we had our second pump, which was like nothing, you know, and it's like, oh man, like we feel like the war is over. It sucks. Like, why am I here? You know,
when you had a lot of GWAT guys that felt that way towards, I think, the end of the end of the GWAT, right?
100%,
you know, because they had heard so many stories of like, you know, stuff that like what we had done in 04 or like, and they get in 010 or 11 and they're like,
oh yeah, especially
like
that
looking around, you know, and like, what am I here for?
Exactly. Yeah. So what happened, you know, and what'd you do to get out, or what, you know?
Yeah. So I was in 4th Stryker, and then I started, that was kind of really how I got into a sniper brigade. I was working as an SDM in the 25th at the end of the 25th, and that was when the SDM program started getting kicked off.
So when you're in Mosul, you started working as an SDM?
So I was a saw gunner in Mosul, and I did a little bit of explosives, mainly water impulse charges. That was like my favorite charge. And then Santana, who was my team lead, was a big component of learning like the SDM. And then creating the Stryker Brigades created the SDM program throughout the Army. The Army ended up accepting the SDM program all Army-wide. The SDM was a squad designated marksman, for those that don't know. it was kind of like a segue in between being a sniper, but using like a long distance asset for the squad, right? But you could put a lot more of these throughout the squad. And so most of what we were using was, at the time, was an old M14 with wood stock, and he had a fixed 10 power scope on top. And so Santana was teaching me a lot of trying to cross train me on the SDM, as we were getting ready to like kind of draw down, I guess, on Mosul. And I had a lot of interest in going to the SDM program so I could kind of get into the sniper program. I took the SDM school, ended up leaving the 25th because they went to Germany. And so when you go to the next unit, they had accepted in the guys that were transferring over, and they lined us all out. And the first sergeant came down and he was like, hey, you know, what'd you do? What'd you specialize in? And he would ask each one of us. And I said, saw gunner and SDM. And he's like, oh, SDM. Okay, cool. Your rank's right. Your skill's right. You'll probably go into the sniper sections. And so that helped me get an entry point into the sniper team, and I became a shooter inside of the 4th Stryker. Never ended up going to school, so I just acted as a shooter and spotter inside of the team. Left that team and ended up going over to a PSD team that was protecting I think it was the colonel and the sergeant major of 4th Stryker at the time. So we had a couple of us that had gone through different schools and settings, and we acted as like an immediate protection PSD for those guys as they would go out into the AO and stuff.
Yep.
And then as we were prepping for our second deployment, that's when I ended up getting hurt. We were about 2 weeks out from the deployment, and I was standing on the back of a Stryker. I had my left arm up on the Stryker. I was standing on the hatch that comes back down, and I was talking to the squad that was inside of the back of it. And another Stryker came into park to the left of the Stryker that I was standing on the back of, and he cut that turn too tight. He had C-wire up on top of the Stryker, so he couldn't kind of see out the port. And someone was supposed to be standing up air guarding him, but no one was. And so he drove right up the back of the Stryker and ended up pinning me in between the Stryker that I was on and his Stryker that he was driving, and just like fucked me up pretty good. Like really kind of compressed my spine a lot and rotated a bunch of my vertebrae, rotated my neck kind of the opposite way, compressed my scapulas into my shoulder blades. And so it gave me a bunch of issues in regards to like rotatability of like doing push-ups and moving some of my bones and ligaments around, and went from being like a PT stud to being like, fuck dude, doing push-ups really hurts. And so that ended up being kind of the feather in the hat that was like, yeah, you're getting medical discharge.
Yeah.
And so I fought that for a little while, tried to stay in, and it just ended up being like, you could just tell they didn't want you at that point anymore. And so no matter what you would do, that you would hit like walls. And so I think I eventually got really burnt. And I was transferred to 5th Stryker and tried to stay in doing things, and it just wasn't like working out with leadership. And so I said, okay, well, I'm going to go and start like getting ready to leave. But before I did that, I went and re-enlisted for 6 years, which was like a big fuck you to my military leadership, because I was still in branch at the time, meaning like I was still inside of like active duty, like my unit. I was still a part of it, so I wasn't inside of the medical brigade yet, like to create my program to get out. So I was still technically an active duty soldier. And so I went and re-enlisted for 6 years, got a huge bonus, and I kind of knew that they were going to press me to get out. And then that was kind of, once they pressed me, then I got another bonus for being medical separated. So.
You made out on that one?
Yeah, I made out on that one.
Yeah,
but I look back on it now, and I kind of wish that I would have like fought harder to stay in, because I was a young dude, and like, you know, you're hot-headed, and you also think you know the world. And I really enjoyed the military. I just didn't realize enough that I didn't enjoy the leadership that I was currently around. And I didn't understand like how to get out of it, or how to get through that path the correct way, other than like throwing my hands up and being like, fuck it, let them push me out. And so that would be my big regret, I think, was like not fighting for my career.
How about were you jacked up though? I mean, that's pretty significant though. You know, like, did you have to do surgeries at all, or?
I went through a lot of like injects, because they were trying to figure out like when you rotate my shoulders around. I get like all this heavy crunching, and so it was all the weight that was getting put on my shoulders that would compress my spine, and then it would be like, fuck, dude, I can't run. Deadlifting is like so much pain. Doing anything push-up wise or pushing upward on my scapulas was like grinding through sandpaper. So it wasn't that I was like broken bones. It was like something was wrong with the compression that the two vehicles that came in and slammed on me. My body just was not working right. And so that kind of became the push out point of like, well, if you can't PT correctly, then you can't PT test correctly, then you can't score correctly, then you can't stay in correctly. And that was kind of my tempo out.
So what did you do after that then? What year was that then?
I got out I was medically discharged in 2008. Yeah.
So it was pretty much drawdown after that for Iraq.
Yeah, like I never went to JRTC, NTC. Like I was just straight combat.
That's awesome. That's good.
Yeah, straight combat. And then I got out. I was kind of lost for a little while. I rode a road bike around Los Angeles for like a year, just doing like 500 miles a week, doing anything I could, man, to just like figure out what the fuck to do. And at the time, I had a girlfriend that recommended I go and work for a shooting range, and I ended up working for LAX gun range down in Los Angeles. And at the same time, I was going through the O'Gara program with SOC to be a contractor. Sorry, Global, not SOC, Global Integrated Security. And so I went out and I was going through that whole program to kind of get a contract out in Basra, because I was like, well, fuck. Everyone's doing contract stuff. I guess like that should be the path for me. And so I did that, and I was on that path, and then the Basra contract ended up not getting picked up. And so that fell through. And I was still just like riding a bike around and working at a shooting range. And finally someone came in and was like, saw me shoot, and were like, hey, have you ever thought of doing 3-gun or USPSA, which was competitive shooting? And I had never heard of it before. And they're like, you're really good at this. You should maybe take a look at it and see if this is something that you might be interested in. And that was kind of the entry point into like where I kind of stepped into like the defense industry and shooting and kind of taking off from there. And I did that probably consecutively for about 8 years, just traveling the country, pulling the trigger, trying to just find some sanity in my life.
So did you do a bunch of competitions? Was it like representing the company, like companies, stuff like brands and stuff like that? Or?
Yeah. So at the time, 3-gun is kind of like F1, I guess you could say. It's very fast. It's very showy. I was shooting for Black Rain Ordnance, Smith Optics, Vortex, Saline Arms International, pretty high up, like as a competitive shooter once I got into it. And I was traveling the nation doing about 30 to 40 competitive shoots a year, just in a 3-gun circuit. And a 3-gun is where you shoot a pistol, a rifle, and a shotgun all in the same event, or all in the same stage. And you have 9 stages, and it's all about speed, accuracy, and fluid movement through the course. And that's all I did, man. Shoot like hundreds of thousands of rounds every year. Just
any highlights from that? Any good competition stories?
The only one that, that really I would say is a highlight would be I shot around a lot of really good people. Jerry McCulloch, Daniel Horner, just all these guys that were like kind of icons when you start looking now at the industry. And they all a lot of them came from like the Army AMU. So they were really kind of big dudes that I looked up to. And it made me a much better shooter. That I think turned into teaching me how to be a better instructor or be a better end user of the rifle. When you're in the Army, you understand like your basics, I guess you would say, of like your zero, your distance, how to clean the gun. When I started competitively shooting, I was like, oh, I'm deadly. Like I'm scary now. Like it elevated that knowledge so much more. That then I think when you translate the competitive side of it into a combat side of it, you turn the end user into a much more a deadly asset. So that would be the biggest highlight for me out of it. Other than that, it was just fun, man. I mean, you're just traveling around shooting guns and hanging out with people and creating a good community. It's just like racing.
Yeah. Yeah. So like I said, you did that for 8 years then. So then, like I said, it was good money, fun time, or is it just kind of like,
No money.
No money.
No money.
No money.
No money.
Just really good times.
Yeah, just good times, man.
Yeah.
You know, you get some sponsorship money here or there. Like
Yeah.
the biggest thing was like, being in it was less fun than what I expected it to. Mm-hmm. It was like, I think it's like anything, right? You know, you go through like the Division 4, Division 3, Division 2, all that's fun. And then you get to your like the pro level and it's like, hey man, yeah, you not only do you need to do all of these events, still maintain the shooting tempo and practice level of what you're doing and what's gotten you to this point. Oh, but by the way, now you have to hit every single Bass Pro Shop and every Cabela's and do a pop-up and talk to the consumer and sell the product. Oh, and all you have to do every single trade show. You have to be in the bus and go around the nation and stop at military bases. Mm-hmm. And so you become this like persona, right, that represents these brands, which ended up helping connect me into the industry of what I do today. Mm-hmm. But that's like the not fun side of it, I think. You know, like everyone's like, oh, dude, I'd love to be doing what you're doing. And you're like, dude, no.
Yeah.
It's not as much fun as you think it is, man. Like,
I know. It's like everybody does, like, even like podcasts or social media, like, it's actually a lot of work.
Yeah, it's a lot of work. Like, trust me, my family hates me. You don't want to be me. It's like...
So what do you do from there then? You know, I know, you foray into the weed business or whatever, but was that a little bit after or was that during?
That was a little after.
Okay.
Yeah. That the competitive shooting helped me segue into running like my own business, making Glock barrels.
That's what, Glock. Yeah, we talked about that.
So I did
that.
I ran a company called S3F Solutions for a long time, maybe about 10 years. Mm-hmm. And we were one of the largest Glock manufacturing barrel companies inside of the United States for quite a while. We made a lot of product for other companies, and then most people knew us for our own brand, which was the accurized Glock barrels. Mm-hmm. And so that took off. We had, everyone from Shane Coley, who was a team captain in Glock, was like shooting our barrels. We had huge organizations like Agency Arms that were running our name on side of their platforms to cross market with us. And that really kind of was a segue into blowing up the like learning about the defense industry for me. Mm-hmm. I worked in it, shot in it, and that was really kind of the big growth moment for me, that it's like, oh, okay, this isn't just competitively shooting. Like there's the actual sales side of it, or the inside workings of the defense industry that I started to learn, and I really started to love. And I did that for about 10 years until the competitive nature of everything just became so large. You know, people saw that, oh, well, if Chris can do it, I can do it too. And so I think after about like 8 or 9 years, there was everyone and their mom was making Glock barrels and M&P barrels and CZ barrels.
It's a saturated market.
Yeah, it became very saturated, and there wasn't a lot of people that were actually manufacturing them. You know, it's all white labeled, which a lot of it ended up coming through the same shop that I was making my barrels and also was the director of growth for. So it was like, okay, well, not only am I competing with all these other brands, I'm making 80% of the other brands as well. And so it just became kind of like more of a stress for me to continue to run my business. And I shut that down, went back to school. And then that's kind of when X kind of gave me a call about like a tap on the shoulder of, hey, maybe step out of the defense industry and come play in weed for a little bit.
How'd that go? What was like you said, the origin story of all that too,
Yeah, man. I had met Xzibit, aka Pimp My Ride.
Yep. We all know him. I know. Yeah.
Yeah, he was pretty big.
He was a big rapper.
He's a big rapper.
Yeah.
He's in the Dre camp.
Yeah.
He just launched his new album.
Yeah.
And then the MTV, that a lot of people don't know, Pimp My Ride was the biggest show for MTV.
Well, his music too. We grew up in the late '90s, 2000s. Xzibit was there. He was one of the
Xzibit, like Snoop Dogg,
all those big dogs. They were huge. Yeah. They were huge. Yeah.
So he's definitely an OG on that, and we had met just randomly through Instagram, to be honest. At the time, I was working for Agency Arms as their operation manager. And I had gone down to do a vehicle interdiction class where we were teaching guys how to shoot around vehicles, what areas would stop projectiles and things like that. And he had seen the video and reshared it on his page and was like, holy shit, this is awesome. X's father is a former Marine. So he's also one of the only rappers that had gone on the the USO tour to deploy and perform for troops. So he kind of had this like connectivity already to troops and like thankfulness to troops. And he was a big gun dude. And so he had reached out and saw that and when he reshared it, I just messaged him back and I was like, dude, I love your music, grew up on it. If there's anything I could ever do to help or support you, I'd love to build a relationship. The very next day, he was in Dubai and someone tried breaking into his then wife's establishment in, I think it was Chatsworth, is where he was living. And he messaged me back and he was like, hey, I think I want to take you up on that. And that kind of like started the relationship. We decided to meet a couple months, like a month or two later when he got back from Dubai. And I think we met at fucking like a Red Robin or like it was the most basic thing like that you would ever, or like an Applebee's or something. And I walked up, he's sitting at the fucking bar eating like plain salmon and rice parfait. And I'm like, you fucking X, dude, what the fuck are you doing? And that's just what he liked, man. He liked going to this one bar that was around his house. He could drink tequila. Everyone left him alone. And I knew that was probably like 8 to 6 years before I became a CEO. And so we maintained this little relationship. I ended up going over and meeting his grandma and like spending Thanksgivings with him. And fast forward to when he ended up creating a cannabis company called Napalm. And he named that in Napalm for 2 reasons. One, to give respect to an album that he had already created called Napalm, and he used the same exact font. And also because his dad had, I think if I remember correctly, was in Vietnam and was a Marine. And so he wanted to kind of tie these two things in, and everything in the brand Napalm Cannabis was military and law enforcement focused. So like all of our vape carts were called like Tomahawk and Javelin and the B-52, and like it was all very, very military focused. TMZ picked it up and they were like, oh, Napalm. Oh man. Killing the Asians.
Oh yeah, that's what they.
What are you talking about?
Yeah.
God, burning it down. Yeah. And they ran this like huge thing saying that it was extremely anti-veteran and that he hated the vets and that he hated the Asiatic Pacific culture because of napalm. And X was trying to kind of like, I guess, like put water on the fire of like not blowing it up, not trying to make it bigger. And it just kept getting louder and louder and louder. And I got this random call from X, and he was like, hey man, my current CEO I got from the tech industry, and he knows how to run business, but he doesn't want to run anything of what we're doing, and he doesn't like the heat that's going on, and I need someone that can come in and help run this company. And so I ended up accepting a position with him initially to be the operation manager for Napalm. And when I went out there to go and do an interview with him, the CEO up and quit that day. And so it ended up being an operation manager position that turned into a CEO position to take over, control the image of the company and grow the brand. And so I accepted that and moved out to California. And that was like the craziest year of like anything I had ever stepped into. And my wife was like not ready for it. Like, she's an old, she's like an old soul from PA. And I grew up in LA, and like, within 24 hours, we're driving Ferraris, going to fucking huge concerts with X and buying 1,000 pounds of weed. Like, she had never, it was way too much. Like, way too much.
Like, I'll stay at home, watch Netflix the next
she was not like, she's like, I don't want all this attention. And I'm like, I fucking love it. I'm like, let's do this. So that was a trip, man, a whole different business aspect than I've ever had been in.
Did you kind of like learn a lot of, I mean, like you already did the barrel company, but then, just, I mean, weeds is different. Like,
it's different. Yeah.
And what years was that? Cause I remember 2012 when weed got legalized and I was in Afghanistan as a contractor, and dude, I started looking up all right, well, if it's legal, how do you make it? You know, like we were like on the onion
'cause
servers.
a lot of people
like,
were looking on that.
dude,
Yeah.
and I got back in. So I had in 2012. I finished contracting in 2013, like that fall. And I don't know if I even knew this guy. Somehow me and him started talking at a bar during Oktoberfest, which is big German, you know.
Yeah.
And he was just like, I don't know if he was a former vet or what, but somehow we met and we just talked, and we talked for like an hour. And I kind of wish I would have like followed up with him, because he was like, dude, I'm making so much money off weed. And he was like, you know, and he's like, we don't know where to stick it. And I think he was kind of like offering me to do protection, because I knew guys that were doing security details, making tons of money. They had nowhere to stick it,
and just move cash around.
Moving cash around, because it was like people were getting robbed, and there was just money pouring in, and there was only the two states, was Washington State and Colorado
At the time.
At the time,
and then Cali was like medical.
Cali was medical,
Yeah.
but I mean, it was recreational. I mean,
It was a weird medical.
it was a weird, yeah. So what was that like then? I mean, what years was that? And then what kind of, you know?
I was
mean,
in
that's a
right around the COVID time.
Okay.
So I missed like the company that X ran before Napalm was called Brass Knuckles, and it was the largest vape company in the world.
Wow.
And that was when distillant was really, really big, and there was no banking systems, and it wasn't really like all that legal. It was like medical, so there was all this gray area. I missed that window, and I hate that I missed that window, because X would always say, like, dude, we'd come back with like $800K of cash every single week, and like you cut each other out, and that's your bonus. And it's like, what the fuck? Like, because there just was no tracking of stuff. Flash forward to Napalm, you know, legal cannabis had now come into play. And so X had a really hard time, I guess you would say, you know, understanding the difference between the two, because you have to track everything with Napalm. You know, things have to be by the books, and the industry itself had just changed. And so for S3F was, I would say, where I learned about how to control business. We had done a couple million within the first a year or two. Going into Napalm, it was much different. It was, you know, hey, there's large investment group behind it. We've got multiple of millions that are inside of the bank. We're selling through 500 plus dispensaries through California. How do we keep them fed? How do we source? How do we get our material and all of our equipment from around the world? So it was really not only just a very small commodity of sales, it was a much larger avenue. And then it was a global environment that I was really kind of having to deal with dealers all around the globe of how to keep this brand afloat. And then that ended up, I ended up working myself out of the job, where we agreed to a partnership with an organization called Buddies Group. They're out of California as well. And so now the two entities are kind of one of the same. And they just constantly fill for Napalm. X does what he wants to do and go out and make music. And his cannabis brand is still running today. But we were able to take advantage. I think the COVID aspect helped us really well grow, because a lot of people were making a lot of money during COVID, free money. Remember, like everyone was getting the $600 of a week from unemployment. They were getting the Biden money cash outs. And so something that made Napalm really big was we made the largest joint the world had really ever seen. We made like an 8-gram joint with 1 gram of live resin diamonds inside of it, wrapped in like a porcelain tip. This thing was like a big cigar in circumference, and it was meant to burn for like 6 to 8 hours if you smoked it right. And we sold it for $150, $160, and we couldn't keep them on the shelves. Because everyone just had COVID money. What were they spending on? Fucking weed. Like,
especially during COVID, like, I need to chill the fuck out.
Yeah, man. I know. Everyone's stressed out. All right, well.
Yeah, but the biggest joint in the world.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. So then, you know, what happened there, and then how did you kind of move on into, you know?
Yeah, so it was overwhelming for my wife. So I knew that she didn't want to stay in it. That was something that was pretty prevalent. You know, Los Angeles is a whole different environment. The weed game is a whole different environment, and the celebrity life is a whole different environment. And once we ended up getting the purchase agreement set down, it was time for me to just kind of be like, time to separate and go different ways. And we also didn't want to stay in California anymore. So we had left California, came back to Colorado, and I started searching for my next gig. And back in the defense industry, because I had stopped S3F, and at this point I was just kind of a free agent. And that I would say was probably around the 22 time frame. So that's when kind of Ukraine kind of kicked off. And I wasn't really doing a whole lot. And so I started focusing on reporting and helping sourcing of product, just like small product, and connecting dots with people of just like, oh, I know someone here, or I know someone there. And that really kind of started the segue of what I was doing in Ukraine. And then I went to go work for Hardhead Veterans, which solidified more of what I was doing in Ukraine, because I was already sourcing product for units and starting to take like the journalism route a little bit, and bouncing off of Nick from Battles and Beers. And then Hardhead Veterans gave me the avenue of also like, hey, not only are you running our community, but you find sales for us, then you can manage those. And most of my sales ended up being, UKR based. And that really kind of started the kickoff of my addiction of what I guess it is today.
What is Project Leaflet?
What rolled into being Project Leaflet today.
So how did you start? I mean, where'd you get the name, and like what was that first post? Kind of because I mean, like said, the invasion. I mean, everything kind of changed. The evac really set the groundwork, and then Ukraine changed the game.
I didn't have even a plan for Project Leaflet. I think that for me, it was something that I had heard, I had heard about Crimea, and like I had done a little bit of studying in the past, but I think like a lot of people, I hadn't really focused a lot, like too much on it. And I was like, well, that seems kind of fucked up. But
I remember when it happened too. 2014.
Yeah. But I didn't really understand a lot because I just wasn't focusing on it. And then what really kind of happened was that I had dudes that I knew that had deployed in Iraq, went to go fight with the Kurds. And then that kind of drew down, and then they went to go fight with the Ukrainians. And so some of them had been there in like 16 and 17, and I just kind of knew relationships with some of these dudes, touch base here and there, just saying, hey man, how you doing? And the war kicks off, and so I'm like, oh shit, like, wow, like this is some crazy stuff. And so I immediately, I don't know why, but I just like, it became so fascinating to me that I remember when, like, hearing the stories and studying when Russia invaded Afghanistan. And so I did some historical just digging on that whole conflict. And I knew about Russia going into the Chechen wars, and I had read some books on that. And so this really kind of like, I guess, piqued my interest in regards to like, okay, well, I know historically some of the background of what RU has done. What's going on with Ukraine? And that kind of like really kind of interests me. Because to me, it seemed like there was a pattern as well. Just like big militaries have patterns. And I started to really dive and report on it on my own personal pages. Just everything that was happening day to day. Anything that I could find, anything that I thought was of interest, reporting on troop movements, how the invasion is going, and reaching out to some of my buddies that were still over there in Ukraine and just asking like, dude, what the fuck is going on? That turned into documenting stories and also requests of supplies. At the time, it was just like, hey man, I'm looking for like socks, and like, can you help me get like the base layer that we used to wear, little square, what the hell were they called? They got
the waffle tops?
Yeah, waffle tops.
Yeah.
And so like trying to find a lot of waffle tops, and like honestly, just like, dude, it was basic shit. Just like getting heat and hand warmers over there. So like when the winter kicks in, these guys aren't like getting frostbite and stuff like that. And then I got to know Nick, and Nick was reporting a lot on the one-on-one stuff. And he had friends that I didn't have friends with, but I had friends he didn't have friends with. And so I guess the dots you could say started to kind of like slowly connect. And then I met a gentleman who was running a company called Project Siren. His name is Patrick. Patrick started what I would say is really kind of like the big key for me in Ukraine that got put in the ignition. He started the Siren chat, which was on Signal, and a lot of us were just like guys that were working with each other or had connections and access to stuff. And it was a huge, long list of guys that were just operational in Ukraine, or dudes that were support assets, or people that were helping with logistics. And it really kind of built a network of like, okay, wow, there's other people that are doing stuff. Maybe this is something that I can find value in. And that really kind of became the addiction for me for, I would say, the first 2 or 3 months of the war. So much so that my wife hated it. I mean, hated it. I could not let off.
Just on the phone.
Man, yeah, I couldn't. Unhealthy, like, addiction. Yeah, like, because there was so much happening.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, it was just, it was everywhere you looked. Like, hundreds of helicopters are coming in. Like, they're all going to the airport. You're like, what the hell? Mariupol's fighting. They're surrounded. Like, so it was everywhere you looked. There was something of way. I don't even know the best way of putting it. Like, you go into GWAT and you think you see all this stuff, and then you see what's happening in Ukraine, and you're like, man, I didn't experience fuck all.
Like conventional warfare.
Yeah, fuck all. Like, I quote that general that did that podcast all the time, where it's like, we saw a lot of combat in GWAT, but we never saw a war. And Ukraine is a fucking war, man.
Yeah, I think that changed forever. I mean, I saw it. I was like, because I remember thinking, oh, the GWAT ended. What two countries will go to war that are, what I mean, like conventional? Yeah, like everyone thought it. Everyone thought it was like, all right, well, even I remember being in the GWAT was like, this 10, 15 years ago, I was like, I don't think we'll ever see a conventional war ever again. Because it's like everyone's a trade partner. Everyone talks about China, but it's really China. You really going to go to war with China toe to toe? Like, and then it's like, and then the GWAT ends. You're like, all right, well, that was real fucking shitty, And then like Ukraine kicks off, and everyone's like, whoa.
Yeah, and you're seeing like SUs like dogfight like above cities at like a couple hundred feet.
Seeing like the helicopters like coming in on like big operating. They're getting shot out of the sky.
Yeah, I mean there was that famous scene like it's March where there's a helicopter over the Dnipro, and you have a fighter jet coming in doing gun runs on it, and you're like, what the fuck is going on?
Yep.
So like that, man, that
shooting
was
flares, and one gets hit, one's like going down. You're like, whoa.
Stuff that I don't think anyone had really like expected to see it, and it happened so fast. So for me, that addiction, like, and then everyone thought Ukraine was going to fall very quickly. So I think for me, that addiction, not only like it grew, but then I was also like, this could end any day. So I gotta stay up on it. And my wife finally was like, okay, well, you're not going to stop doing this. I can tell. If you're going to do something with it, you should probably direct your energy into something or somewhere, so it's not just on your personal Instagram. Because at the time, that's the only thing I was doing was just I was flooding my Instagram, hundreds of stories and like posts. And so I thought, okay, well, I'll create a company. S3F is dead at this point. I'm kind of not doing much, and I had seen this image on Google that I kind of like formed the first logo of Project Leaflet with, and it was this B-24 that was flying sideways, and it was dropping roses out of it. And I was like, man, that's a cool image. And so I grabbed that image, and I went to an artist, and I was like, hey, I like this concept, but I want to change some stuff around. So we put a whole background of like it flying through like the clouds, and we changed the flowers out to pieces of paper. And I had this idea that, in every conflict, you have forms of propaganda or way of getting information out to the masses that you specifically want them to know. And it doesn't matter if it's true or not. You just want them to know this information. And that's a leaflet. And a leaflet, it's dropped through bombs or artillery pieces or in the back of airplanes. But it is information that you want the populace to know, regardless of what they may feel about it. It's your view on this information. And I was like, man, that's kind of a cool like idea. And so I had another guy that was running a training company called Project Gecko. And that's where I connected the two. I was like, the leaflet, Project Leaflet. Okay, now I have something here. And that became what it was today. It was just really heavily reporting on OSINT, up to date information on war, global conflicts. We've kind of expanded out of Ukraine, but we still focus very heavily on Ukraine. And most people today, I would say, actually know us for the news and OSINT more than truly what we actually do, which is war supply, logistics, advising for military units. And problem fixing. Yeah.
I mean, it's like I said, it's a cool. I remember when we first talked. I was like, I fucking love that name. I was like, Project Leaflet. That's dope.
And like people, now
I got it immediately. I was like, oh, dude, airdrop, 100%.
Yeah, 100%. Like, I want you to see something and know something. I want you specifically to see and know. and like now, we've got 2 big pages. One of them, like the caption is "Wage War Through Deception," and like we picked that from Mossad.
Yeah, that's
we thought that was a pretty good, like, because that's what a leaflet is. In a sense, it is somewhat deception. It is propaganda, but it is also, it's information. It's whatever you want it to believe in. Like,
because we'll see those OSINT channels. I mean, they blew up during the evac. I remember, it was like because they weren't really in existence. I mean, they kind of did, but like, I feel like
Atlas was there,
and a few others. Yeah, but they grew within like weeks. I remember and guys were getting shut down. I remember Atlas went through like 3
pages
within like a month because of the Afghan evac. They just kept shutting down the page, and they would be like, "Here's my backup. Here's my backup." Like, so we were following all these backups, and
Meta and all them were fighting against it too.
Yeah, Meta was fighting against the OSINT.
They didn't like us doing a lot of this stuff.
Even I think. Well, I wasn't on Twitter at the time. I'm on X way more now. But like back then,
they weren't vibing with it either.
They weren't vibing with it, but I still wasn't on it though. Yeah. Like I wasn't on it. I think more information still got through though, because Twitter was typically better with news. Yeah. But I know that Instagram though was, I think, just more popular among the community. So that was I don't know. It felt like that was the main route that everybody was posting. They kept posting, and it was like,
I mean, there was a lot of like MSNBC and like those dudes didn't like what OSINT was doing because it wasn't. We weren't considered like news outlets. Yeah. Truly, I'm not even a fucking news. We're 2 dudes. That
exactly. No.
But the difference was like we could post so fast and like pull information and get it to the masses way faster than big media could do it.
Absolutely. Well, and the signal chats is what blew up too, because everyone was trying to get their interpreters out. So everyone was going to OSINT, and then everyone was going to their groups like back and forth. And so like the news, you'd watch the news, everyone's like, "What's going on?" But then it's like if you were on Instagram or OSINT, you were seeing the real shit that was happening, and they were still trying to suppress it. Even the DOD was trying to like lock, video down. It wasn't until later that some of the guys got out and they're like, "This is my GoPro footage," and you're like, Jesus, and it was worse than what we experienced. What you could see at the time. And that was a few months later, and I got out of the guard because that was like the last straw. It was a bad taste in my mouth. I was already kind of on my last leg, and I was like, "Yeah, I'm done with this." But then, Ukraine kicks off, and then like everything, and I feel like, which is kind of, I think it was, I remember hearing Twitter back 10, 15 years ago during the, kind of talking to journalism of it, but OSINT, but one of the, back then when Twitter was much more free speech, in their kind of whatever you call it, their ethos, back when like the Arab Spring happened, they were all using Twitter to communicate. Oh yeah. That, this is like 2011, and then so you hear about, oh my God, Twitter, everything moves fast on Twitter, and also information and news, and then unless you were in the journalistic space, like like the common person wasn't really on it.
I wouldn't say like they didn't understand what was happening.
Exactly. Yeah. Now it's very commonplace. Like your mom or dad might be following some OSINT account just to stay up to date. Like it's much more common. But I think it's cool though too, because it's getting information out. Two, we use it for intelligence. Like when it was like open source intel, it was especially like, dude, during the invasion when I was there, like 3 weeks in, dude, we tracked the Russian movements all through X, all through Instagram. Like we knew things within minutes that they were happening.
And there's dudes that specialize in this stuff, dude, that like nerd out straight up on very specific things. AFV identification or something. They're a page on Instagram, and all they do is armored vehicle identification, and like they were able to track all of these rare vehicles. No one else was doing this shit. Like
some autistic
but just like some dude that like he's straight up tracking exact vehicles of like where they came from, the rarity, why they're rare. But that's a specialty. And you have dudes that are doing it on drone aspects now. You have dudes that are doing it on EW. You have dudes that are doing it on troop movement. And I think it's gotten to the point where it's not going to go away. You can get so much more information. I think on a sharper scale, more focused than what big media would happen. I mean, fuck, a year ago, I was at my parents or my wife's parents' house, and we were watching the news, and like her dad was like watching something. He's like, weren't you just talking about this? I'm like, oh yeah, I reported on it 2 days ago. It's nice to see that they're breaking it now. It's so I think it's gotten to the point where OSINT is something that if you're not really paying attention to it, you're kind of going to be
left behind.
A little bit behind. And Leaflet's now 3 years into it, and we've had talks with U.S. Marine EOD. We speak with the LAAD Anti-Air Division like weekly. We've got U.S. Army Future Command that reaches out to us. And this is a lot of the stuff because these guys are they know that they're outside of the cycle, inside of their training regiments, and they're looking for information now that's changing.
Yeah, and that's what's wild too, because I mean, I think technology obviously changes everything, but like even the basic infantry guy is going to almost know as much as his commander. Back when we were in 2000s, none of this existed. All I knew was like what my battalion commander said. And even then, I had no idea what the hell was going on. I'm like, okay, whatever,
Right.
I guess that's my AO.
It's high level.
It's high level. Yeah, right. Like I know my maps. That's about it. I've got my blinders on because you're just a private.
Right. Right.
Now you go into Marine squads. I guarantee those kids know if more, just as much, or if not more than their commanders do.
Yeah. I mean, if you're a private or if you're a specialist, if you're a corporal, if you're not going out and if you're not on Telegram, if you're not on Signal, if you're not on these apps and like networking with troops, like you're probably in the wrong today.
Yeah.
Because speaking openly, a lot of your command has no fucking clue what is going on.
The commands are command, and they're doing officer stuff within the government. You know what I
Sure,
mean? Like they're
sure.
playing their games. But that's what I'm saying is like, it's crazy that's flipped because, and for me, this has always been my opinion. I was like, the worst place to be right now, or like especially the last 3 years, is to be in an infantry unit because you're watching everyone else do what you're trained to do. You joined the army and you got after it. I mean, I would hate to be like in the middle of my contract as a Marine infantry and just like watching people, my former senior Marines like shooting javelins at Russian tanks. And I'm just sitting here like, I'm not going anywhere. I
mean, that's probably why you see so many GWOC dudes and like Chosen and stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Or you see a lot of guys rolling over like, we're going to go get some.
There's a page they missed and they want to scratch that itch.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But in generalities though, I mean, I think we've run into that frustration. I know, you have, and the guys that you've talked to and even people I've talked to, it's just like, you guys need to be, they're like, well, the U.S. military's caught. I was like, no, you're not. You're not even close. You're not even close. I mean, like, once in a while you'll see like somebody post, I'm like, oh, here's some big drones that we incorporate into the big army. It's like, oh, congratulations, you're still behind on that.
Yeah.
FPVs are still ripping apart tanks, and so, as well as other things like, hey, trench warfare or hey, you ever been on the other side of a thermobaric bomb? Like, there's nothing going to stop you or stopping it. You know what I mean? Like they're using their, they're going to start torching shit, So I think, or hey, that's cool. You got all your tanks and everything, but anti-air defense, because a lot of people were like, well, we don't see a lot of why aren't they air inserting? I was like, because they get shot out of the sky.
They'll die.
Yeah, they'll die. Like, and then it's like, well, why aren't they doing more group movements? Well, because there's anti-tank mines everywhere.
Yeah.
So good luck.
It's a misconception of like, you see it a lot on Instagram where people are like, these dudes are losing. They're fucking sucking. That this is this. But it's also a misconception of how real war is fought. The level of, breaking through the East, for example. Man, the world has never seen a minefield like that is an automatedly remined by drones that you can't kill. They're just going to drop more mines. You've got no air assets. You've got KA-52s that are hitting you with guided missiles from 15 kilometers back from the moment that you start trying to get to the front line. Like, it's different. This is not GWOT.
Yeah,
This is much, much different.
I think that's what, and like I said, I think that's what really changes with guys that are in squads on active duty or whoever now. You should be on these channels because you're going to learn. I shouldn't say a lot more. You're going to learn a lot more. You're going to stay up more informed than, I hate to say it, like, unless your lieutenants better be, like platoon commanders better be on these chats. They better be looking at them.
And we have a lot of those dudes that are finally reaching out. There's files that we share with a lot of these guys, whether they're lieutenants, commander, and officers. And it's just of lessons learned that we've seen from over the last 2 years of working as ground forces, especially as GWOT guys in this type of war, because I think these younger kids now especially are seeing what's happening in Ukraine. And if they're not getting those lessons from command or from the branch, they're going out and they're looking for it on their own. And that's not going to stop, and it shouldn't be reprimanded if they're actually doing that. Because these kids need to learn. So do these lieutenants who are also kids. And, you know, whether you're 25, 26, 28 in charge of a platoon, you're a fucking kid, dude. And on top of that, if you haven't seen fiber optic systems wipe out an entire squad, you're going to want to learn about it. Like it's coming to you in a very near time frame.
Exactly. Yeah. Or like even it still comes to like EW, and you know it's like you know, they're like, oh, it's so great, you know. And I know there's some who I was talking to the other day, they were like, oh yeah, you know, we got the Army, you know, it's great, they're letting us like redo some stuff, and I'm like, yeah, not really. Like I mean like yeah, you are. Yeah, they probably give you guys some new equipment and you're checking stuff out, but I'm like, these guys are, I mean, could you imagine going to an infantry unit right now, even right now, and going, here's a bunch of explosives, here's a little bit of a budget, solder whatever you want together, and there's the range, just keep, like, are you kidding me? They'd lose their mind. They'd be like, I can't believe we just gave these guys mortars. They're tearing them apart in their barracks room and recreating bombs. Like they would never fly in the Army or Marine Corps.
No, and that's a big conversation I have with some of your leaders where I'm like, you have to be comfortable with your E3s and your E4s. Like let them go play with 3D printers. You know, give them their nicotine, give them their fucking Red Bulls, man. Put them in a room and let them create the scariest fucking shit that you've ever seen, and then test it in between the unit. If you're not doing that, you're going to get left in the dust a little bit, because if you look at the difference between the West and what we're doing in Ukraine, you've got guys that are GWAT dudes that are literally doing that. They're your E5s, your E6 that didn't get enough scratch. Now they're over there fucking ripping up MICLET cords and making some of the sketchiest bombs and AI and drone systems that you've ever seen. And the reason why you're not seeing so much Western EW and drones be successful in Ukraine is because if you can notice that RU has made an adjustment on the battlefield that day, you can go directly back to your Ukrainian facilities and adjust on the fly. And that's that cat and mouse game. The West won't do that. You know, we want to have control over what gets fired, who fires it, the chain of command of how that structure is done. We want our big budget contracts. You know, fuck yeah, dude, I love a $200,000 switchblade. Oh, all day. Give me that. That's not it. You know, Ukraine is making $1,500 switchblades with AI targeting integrated into it. Like, we don't need your switchblades.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And that's something that I think is hard for the West to grasp, is how fast the technology is changing over there. How free it is in regards to technology advancement and design and creation. And it's something that we can't really compete with on the West just because of the way that we're built. We can't do it, and we won't do it. Yeah.
Well, it's like again, it's the speed and the freedom of it. You know, like I said, that the West can definitely, like the U.S. Army was like, all right, well, you guys we'll start playing with stuff. Like, I get why they don't, because right now we don't have to. But at the same point, though, it's like, well, you better, because this is what we're looking at.
It's happening fast.
I mean, there's companies right now is pretty cool, that are coming out with these type of drones. But at the same point, like, this is awesome. It's like all being integrated, the Anduril systems, you know, I'm sure you saw that.
Huge.
They're huge. Big company. Big company right now. And by the way, it's awesome. They have like bombs you can throw out of a helicopter, and then they, you know, and it's all, I don't know if it's, I imagine that's probably like one of those payloads where it's like stick anything you want in them. Like, that's what it seems like, where it's like, this is affordable.
But Anduril still is like, man, you know, they're huge. They're going to do exactly what they're supposed to with the U.S. budgets and you know, U.S. contracts, and they're delivering stuff. But they're still not going to be a 50,000 square foot warehouse that's pumping out $50 drones ready to kill. And that is what's happening in Ukraine and in other countries. You know,
it's like, even the EW threat, like, that stuff changes all the time, you know, and you can't all the time. You know, I think that's what, especially with the war going on now, not so much in the beginning aspect, but now with the trench, you know, things are starting to solidify.
Things are stagnant more.
Yeah, it's a lot more stagnant because of the EW. And because I remember in the beginning, you were just seeing the DJI drones just dropping grenades left and right. And it was like, you know, and if things were moving and shifting, so the EW systems weren't obviously probably weren't even up and running. Now like I said, I think it was great on the aspect. Now you're just seeing like, we're just doing fiber optic cables. Now you can't.
Yeah, the fiber optic's a big thing, and there is counters that are coming to the fiber optic, but it's not coming nearly as fast as it needs. But yeah, fiber optic right now is definitely that's probably the scariest.
Well, it's like the
thing.
commandment dead ID. Now it's just you're playing cards with fate. That's what I mean. Like, it was like in Iraq where it's like, oh, they're doing cell phones. Oh, they're doing pressure. Now it's, just sit there and make sure it happens. So it'll eventually, I said, like, it's a
that's the scariest thing about fiber.
Exactly.
You can command dead it. You can air burst it. You can set the munition up to whatever you want. But both RU and Ukraine, they're successfully having fiber optic platforms that are reaching 30 to 50 kilometers, and they're both trying to get up to 100 kilometer. There's nothing in our fucking arsenal in regards to a fiber optic that reaches that range.
Exactly. Yeah.
Nothing. Fucking nothing.
Nothing. Yeah.
The toe doesn't even come like near that range. So now you're telling me that I can put an explosive charge on a $200 to $1,500 platform. I can send it out 40 kilometers, and I could probably kill anything on the battlefield. And I'm going to keep sending them. That's a big scary problem. Because there's nothing that stops it unless it's kinetic.
Yeah. Well, I think again, it comes down to the simplest solution is carry a shotgun. It's not going to be great, but it's good. But it's something,
No, but it is something. And there's actually a couple companies that have reached out to me that they've specifically developed CUAS type of munitions. They're getting kills out to 80 and 100 yards,
which is awesome.
Gauge. It's long distance for shock and kill.
Exactly. Because I know a lot of people. I mean, like immediately, because I saw that happening. Like right away in the beginning of the war, I was like, "Well, you better start carrying shotguns."
Right.
And even at the time it was only drone droppers. It wasn't even FPVs yet.
Yeah, and you're not going to reach that with a shotgun.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But it was like, well, if they're doing something, I was like, at least there's some sort of counter, And then FPVs came out. I'm like, man, like that's going to be rough.
That's the flexibility. I think that and people see the air assets. When you think drones, I think that's the biggest thing that probably most of the West and most troops think about is like, oh, it's like FPV drones. But it's so much more. There's most of the West doesn't understand like the level of ground assets that are drone and AI based. Most of the sea assets that are drone and AI based. It's not just your air. Ukraine is fully focused on wanting to have full automated assaults, ground assets that are drone based that are supported by air assets, and you're minimizing the amount of men that are on the battlefield. And they're doing it successfully. They're doing it today, and that's really what worries me. Because the West, I think, as a fighting force, we're so used to Iraq, for example. You go in, you decimate the air, you decimate the ground, you put ground forces in, and then you fight an insurgency. But this is going to be a lot worse. The drone aspect of what is just fully being built by countries that won't be able to compete with the United States in regards to a military aspect, meaning your Raptors, your 35s, your Abrams. You're going to see them lean very, very heavily into the drone and AI.
It's like when they lean heavily into IED. It's like at the end of the day,
it's cheap, man.
It works. It's cheap and it works. I mean, we had, it killed a lot of dudes, and on top of that, like the way we had to counter it, we just built bigger vehicles with V-hulls.
Yeah, exactly.
And then
they start rolling over and become cumbersome.
Exactly, they become cumbersome. Then they put them in Afghanistan. We're like, when I were in the mountains. And with a fucking MRAP, and we had those issues.
Same thing with the Strykers. They took the Stryker out of Iraq. They put it in Afghanistan. They're like, why doesn't it work? You're like, well, it's a fucking interstate vehicle that you put in the mountains.
Exactly. Like they did that with the MRAPs. There's no shock in them, so because they're built for streets. And now we're in Afghanistan. Those things
just are rolling everywhere.
It's nuts, and they're super heavy. But I agree. I think taking a look at, and again, Project Leaflet also too. It's like you guys are building the network. And being able to get stuff to people. I mean, Ukraine is the big one. That's obviously where everything's developing. You're seeing the Ripsaw that when we were there, you're starting to see
big
that big
tank
tanks.
Drone.
Yeah, and then you're seeing the fiber optic cables. You're starting to see long range stuff. You're you know what I mean, like all sorts and they're still fighting conventional tactics too. I mean, you're still going in with tanks. They're still going in with or not Bradleys with infantry fighting vehicles. They're still, like it's
the Ukraine's got Brads.
Yeah, they got Brads. Yeah. So they're exactly. Yeah, actually, they had that Brad tank kill that was pretty famous, like about a year ago.
And I think that's the big difference between Ukraine and Russia, right? Is like Ukraine doesn't have the manpower that Russia has, and that's obvious.
Yeah.
But they do have the Western backing. They do have the drone application and the AI application that's ahead of them. I would say that Russia's probably ahead in the EW aspect. Their EW is quite well. But Ukraine understands that they can't sacrifice a lot of guys. That's where the Western support comes in. You know, the Bradleys, the Abrams, the Leos, the Strykers. These are keeping a lot of guys alive. Just on the survivability of how the product's built.
You see the Abrams get hit with like 5 FPVs from Russia.
Yeah,
it's like, ooh, that's the build quality.
Yeah.
You
also have a crew compartment that separates it from the ammunition.
Well, that's what I'm saying is like the design of the T90 compared to the design of the Abrams.
Yeah,
like you're seeing it play out. You know, there like everyone's like, well, tank to tank. I was like, yeah, but you see
it's different.
T90 gets hit with 1 FPV and it goes.
Yeah,
and the Abrams gets hit and no one dies. It gets hit with 5. It just disables the tank and they bail out. Like
Yeah, and there was footage that just came out maybe about a month ago where a Bradley crew they had hit a mine. They had a crew inside of it. The crew lives, and then a second Bradley comes in, saves that primary Bradley crew, gets hit by multiple FPVs on the way out, an ATGM on the way out, and it still continues to get through the dragon's teeth. And you're like, by the way, that's like 4 versions back of what we make.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That was like the 1980s. What the best part is now you're seeing all these things they built for the Cold War. Because Bradleys were built like during the Cold War, or whatever it was.
It's an M2A2 ODS brand. That's an old Bradley.
Yeah, the Bradleys were like, finally.
And you got like 2 Slavic dudes in there like just banging music, smoking cigarettes. Listen, I love American Bradley.
Ukrainian techno. Just like, all right, here we go. Yeah. It's not how they thought they were going to be implemented, but it works. No, yeah, I agree. I think that's you're seeing, I think especially with the OSINT growing, seeing everything change, what works, what doesn't work, but also that passing of information. It's fun and cool. I shouldn't say fun, cool, but it is great being in that community because you know what's going on right away, and like intel is king. If you're and we can go beyond Ukraine. I mean, you can see what's going on like in Israel, or you see what's going on like even like yesterday. I texted you and it's like, hey, we might be back in Afghanistan.
It's like we've already been posting, we've already been doing stuff on it.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, well, is that true or not? But and it's funny because like some people are like, is that real? I was like, let me check my network. Our networks are blown up. Like, man. And there's guys that still have people on the ground in Afghanistan. Like I could probably go back into some of my chats if I really wanted to dig in and be like, hey, what's going on the ground? Like,
and you could probably find it.
And find it within probably a few hours. I could probably get it. Somebody that was like, oh, hey, they didn't make it out of the evac, but they just kept my number.
Right.
It's like,
and that's the power of OSINT, especially with all these pages now doing so many specialized things. On Instagram, there's a couple of us that are in these huge group chats that we can all confirm off of each other. There's so many of us that do OSINT from around the globe that, hey, this just happened. Can anyone confirm this? Does anyone else see this? And then we start to create our own stories based off the information that we're sharing together and the knowledge that we're gathering that's not from big media.
Yeah, exactly.
And a lot of times we end up being faster.
Well, faster and more accurate. Or even if it's faster, you're like, oh, it's the first, but it's like you'd be very quick to correct.
Yeah, because we're going to continue talking.
So like if you get something wrong, 5 minutes later you'll post a correction, be like, this is what really happened. Big news will just fuck it up, and then you're like, oh, that's not, because they have this news cycle. They got to move on to the next thing. Because I mean, you got, when Syria fell, and then like what's going on in Syria, and it's like, well, what's going on in Afghanistan, what's going on in the, Africa's always kind of, I wouldn't say a black hole, but it's always shifting left and right. So everyone's like trying to trying to pin that one down. But, you're seeing what conflicts are popping off, and, it's like, the world's big, but it's small at the same time.
Yeah, it's pretty small.
Yeah, especially now with the OSINT community and
social media and the connectivity we all have now.
Exactly. Yeah. Things get moved on can get actioned on pretty quick, which is, like I said, it's pretty crazy. I mean, October 7th happened, and it was like it was all over. Clearly,
And a lot of pages really focused on what was going on then. Trying to figure it out and like put the pieces together and create one big puzzle image of okay, hey, I now I kind of get it.
Yeah.
I think Fox kind of had a bit of a feather in the hat because Trey was stationed
Trey was there.
Yeah, Trey Inkst. Big shout out to him. He's a phenomenal reporter.
What's his? I mean, you probably if you talked to him a few times. What's his view on it compared to, what's going on, like, say, within the community? He's obviously at Fox News. I'm sure there's other combat, like war reporters, but, like, you kind of see, what's his thoughts on that? It's kind of funny because he's like, we've talked with him,
Yeah.
or you've talked. He's like, oh, you guys are doing that, and it's like, yeah, man, you got the Fox News budget, like, we're scrapping shit together, asking for money.
It's very different,
Yeah.
Trey was I've talked to him a couple times, and I like to call him like at least a cohort or a friend.
Yeah.
Trey, I've bounced ideas off of him of like hey, what should I do with Leaflet? And, but I don't want to speak for him. I think that Trey is in a much different avenue than what the OSINT side does. He went to Ukraine and we went to Ukraine, and so we kind of had this connectivity. But obviously, with him being Fox, where he's going is where he's going. Like Fox is gonna dictate some of that, and I think there's a double-edged sword. Like he gets a lot of good access. He's interviewed Zelensky, he's interviewed some people on very high levels of the Israeli parliament and government. So that's that access that you get by having the big media, right? But then I think on the other flip side of it, Trey will be like, you get to focus on stuff that I wish I could focus on sometimes, because just being OSINT, you can kind of do what you want and go and dig in certain areas that you want, where Trey may have to go and just do, specific stuff. And since he's stationed in Israel and he lives there, that is obviously his focus. They're not going to probably let him jump back out to Kyiv or Izum or whatever because he wants to. Fox wants you to focus on what's going on in Israel. I think that's why he created a secondary business. I think it was called Experience Human, where he was taking a lot of like his combat photography, traveling through the world and placing it somewhere else, so that he can kind of express his emotion and feelings through that. But I think there's a jealousy on both sides, right? I'm like, fuck, dude, I'd love to like work for Fox and do nothing but combat report. And dude, Trey has earned his right to be there. He's been doing it since he was 20 years old, jumping into war zones on himself. Like he has earned his spot to be there. But I think there's also, on the flip side of it, I can do whatever I want, when I want, where I want, and report on what I want. And so that's the other freedom that comes from the OSINT, right? I may not have the big budget as Fox, but I also have the ability to work as much as I want on a topic that I want. Yeah.
And we can kind of get into that a little bit more, when it comes to the logistics and financial side of the house, and we've talked about it, but like when it came to like, I don't know how far, you know those guys a little bit better than I do, but like, stuff that's going on, like how do you make it profitable? You know what I mean? Everyone's talking right now, being like, "Oh yeah, these adventures." It's like, well, to be completely honest with you, it's not as like I said, it's not as glamorous as you think. We have that thing. It's like, like people are like, "Oh yeah, your podcast is doing great." I was like, "Yeah, it looks like it, but I've made no money."
Glad I made $50 this month.
Yeah, exactly. I made $62. I just got monetized.
I know,
yeah. But it's like I've sunk a bunch of money into it. I'm still sinking money. And you're leaving family. You're like especially for me when we made the
Leaflet, man.
we did the Embed Actual. Like we got backing, but we were looking years before that. So it was like prep work.
Yeah, it wasn't easy.
No, it wasn't easy. Yeah, and it's like you think it is, and it's like, well, and you kind of look at these other pages, and it's like everyone's all in that same community. It's like kind of, I don't say a struggle bus, but it's like everyone you see a page that's like 150, 200,000 or something, but then you're like, well, how do you monetize that?
Yeah, that's hard to do.
Yeah, and like I said, we can talk about that, like just kind of the business financial side. Like, look, especially if someone's listening right now, I could call this like segment, like you want to get into war reporting, or combat journalism. A lot. Like how do you do it? It's like, well, it's easy to, I shouldn't say easy to do. It is kind of easy to do, but it's the making the money, just like any business. It's like
easy. It's easy to do. It's the hardest thing is how do you stay alive? How do you feed yourself? How do you feed your family?
Exactly. Yeah.
I took a much different route than everyone else that I know. Nick does from Battles and Beers does something completely opposite than I do. My friends over at Northern Provision, this will be their last year.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he's tired.
Yeah.
Only Wars, he's been around, but he's only one dude, and he was in college, and I know that he's getting burnt. He's automated a lot of stuff. Atlas, they broke apart. Their owners separated away with ownership that came in. They've created two different things, the War Blog and now the Atlas. And I think the hardest thing for any of these pages that have started up is, hey, how do you eat and how do you stay alive? The pattern that I saw was that a lot of these companies were really just making money through like t-shirt sales and flags and like swag. And that's not a great longevity.
No, it's not. Yeah.
it's not a great program because cool, I made a couple bucks here and there every couple months, but that doesn't keep you doing what you're doing. The hardest thing that I noticed also, or what I expected to happen, was that the honeymoon phase was gonna roll off, which it did very quickly, just like it did in GWAT, just like it did in Vietnam, like it did in any war. The population gets tired, and so support stops coming in. I really used Leaflet to back along with what I do in the defense industry, which was product sales and support channels of just access to gear. And that has been really a big component of what's been able to keep Leaflet going. We aren't just a news company, but we're a defense providing company. And so those sales help keep us running and also allow us to purchase the items that help support units. And that's kind of our cycle. Most people, like I say, know us for the news, but most people don't know that we're advisors and we're defense sales company. So for us, that has been a big component that we took a completely different fork in the road than all these other news agencies, because we weren't really you weren't seeing posts that were like, oh, gimme. Hey man, we need money. Hey man, we need this. We kept it very quiet, and we keep doing our sales, and that keeps us focused on the news aspect of it and keeps us focused on what our true mission is, which is advising and unit support.
Yeah, because like I said, I like that double aspect of Leaflet. It's like, hey, it's almost like you're reporting on the war, but you're a part of it. You're like helping.
Yeah,
assist,
very much so.
Like there's something more in the game than just reposting or spreading the news, and I come from the media side. So it's like in my head for media monetization, it's much a longer game. I feel like, because look, there's guys that are making tons of money on YouTube that have never touched foot in Ukraine,
100%.
And which is great. And like, I feel like I kind of feel bad sometimes because I feel like some of those Instagram accounts that put so much time and effort into building their following, it's like, I hate to say it, but if you would have just been not say would have, I mean, if you shifted to YouTube on like a talking head, now it still takes time to develop, you got your Kagan Dunlap. Of course, he's
he's exploded though. He's exploded.
Yeah, he's exploded. And nothing against him by any means, but or Preston Stewart, I think he's going to try to take his first. Exactly. Yeah, he's exploded. He's going to try to take his first trip.
Yep.
But which is great. That's fine. But you kind of, and I always think, how do you make money? Because I'm in cinematography films. Like, hey, how do we make money off of it? Yeah, that's cool.
How do we live?
How do you live to do this? How do you continue to do it? And I think, even with Into the Breach, we're starting with this, but I do plan to make it into something bigger. Like this is how we start and this is where we go, or these are the plans for the future. And I feel like, we talked right away with like Project Leaflet, like, okay, if we want to do multiple documentaries or multiple things with we put together business proposals and stuff like that. Now, do they get funded? No, but if you do at one point,
you never know.
You never know. Like, and
we got
embed funded. So it's like, okay, cool, awesome. Like we had it ready to go. And I think that's kind of tough with monetization. Like, with the Instagram OSINT pages, they're fucking invaluable, but I think it's really hard for those guys to keep. It's so much time consuming, and you're not seeing a reward, and you're not getting financially compensated for it.
No, and unfortunately, that's because that was one of the reasons why we did such a different path with Leaflet, was because we very quickly on it realized that Meta wasn't going to fund us with anything that we posted. I could be reaching millions of people, which we do every single week or every single month with Leaflet. We make no money on any of our social media platforms. I mean, we get a zero return, and I'm lucky if we don't get regulated off the stuff that we post. And so, then it was like, okay, well, if we're not going to get money off of what we post and what we report, okay, well, let's get some swag out there that at least helps like bring a little bit in. But that's when the defense side came in, because a lot of the times when I went over the first time in 22, I was really focusing on the same stuff that Nick was, one-on-one interviews, documenting stories, and like turn that into something to figure out a way to make money out of it. Nick does, his books, which you've seen return on, and that's a lot of effort to build those out. And then he's also doing his YouTube, which he does a really good job on. I think he's up to like 70,000 subscribers. But even in that regard, Nick and I talk, and he's like, yeah, they fucking block me, and they cut monetization just because like I talk about war stuff or I'm telling stories. And so that becomes something that's also hard on an OSINT page because it's not consistent. You can't really bank your your family on that.
Yeah.
And so that was why I reached out to you about doing the pitches. Hey, maybe we can do something bigger. But for me, it was really the reporting side of it was dope. But once the cameras turned off, that was when my work started.
Yeah. Which is also fun. I I love the camera stuff, obviously creating, but I also love that world that you live in too.
The camera stuff's great,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
it was man, I just love making motherfuckers deadlier. That's it.
Well, it's also like knowing that you have it's like being an asset, it's great. Like I love the media side. I'll keep doing it. Like I feel like I can be an asset telling the story, making it look awesome, but at the end of the day though, sometimes it's just nice being like, hey man, we'll run you some, run you some gear, we'll get you what you need,
and understanding how to get it over there correctly.
Or even just be like, oh, we need somebody to do this. Do you know anybody? Like, oh yeah, I got a guy, and it's just connecting and that, connecting the dots within the community, because if you need something, if something's there, or
I mean, we're 3 years into it, and it's kind of become like a like you better call Saul type of type of thing. The amount of calls and messages I get on my Signal now, it's a little ridiculous. And it's requests of all kinds of things, or like training avenues, or just help, or like, hey man, like our fucking engines blew in our Brads. Do you know where anyone can give us M113s that could do an engine swap? I'm like, yeah, probably know it. And that's really what Leaflet has turned into. It's much more fixing and supply support than it is news. But people don't know that.
They don't know that.
They don't really, or they don't care about that.
You should put that on the pin that we are also fixing supply support.
I do it all the time. I'm like, we make our post a product that, we we were pushing 4 CASA twin engine birds.
I was gonna say, how was that? I mean, can you go through some of those stories? Like, hey, we got this, or how that works, and I'm sure people would want to know, like, okay, you have these, how do you sell them? How do you, and I think too, we've talked about it. It's not by any means, none of this is illegal by any stretch. It's just kind of like not in people's world. So it's like, go to a regular person and be like, hey, I got these planes and we're going to sell them to people. And that, and like
planes, armored vehicles,
and people are like, how do you cross that over to different countries? Like, well, this is how you do, like there's ways to do it. It's legal, but it's like, just blows people's minds. Something, it's like, if you're not a part of it, you have no idea.
And even a lot of these units, like we get a lot of like comments where people are like, oh, these motherfuckers are like self-funding. Like, where did all my billions of dollars and stuff go into this war? And it's just a misunderstanding of how military assets and money between governments move. People they really forget that a lot of us used to fundraise in GWAT for, I don't know if you remember, but dragon skin was a big thing for a long time.
I never got it. I remember hearing about it.
No, because the Army banned it right away. And dragon skin it wasn't around for a long time, but it was this plate system, and it had little discs instead of one big plate, and it was supposed to bend with the body, and the kinetic energy was supposed to be absorbed a lot better. And it was huge at a time, but it wasn't approved by the DoD, and but a lot of troops knew it, or thought they knew that it was working, and so a lot of us fundraised for it. We asked for money, not only for dragon skin, for other parts. Hey, if we didn't like our M68 red dot, I wanted to buy an ACOG. Well, fuck, dude, I don't make that much money. Like, can anyone help me out? And that's what a lot of this is. A lot of that is that big monetary amounts fall into like HIMARS and rockets and F-16s and munitions for them and EW systems and AA platforms and rehabilitation of cities. And so sometimes a lot of that funding doesn't fall to these units that may need specific needs of requests. And those guys are able to either work with NGOs or with self-funding, or they'll give us patches or whatnot, and so we put up them for sale, and it helps us bring monetary amount back in to purchase items that the unit may need. And that's really what a lot of that ends up being, is why you see so many units fundraising, just because the amount of gear that they're also like cycling through. The amount of fucking gear that we go through in Ukraine, dude, is insane. Just from fragmentation, getting ripped up on stuff, and it's very hard to get it fixed. A lot of these manufacturers are either in the U.S. or they're in the UK, somewhere else. So then if you damage something, getting it back out of the country to get it fixed, to repair it, to get it back in the country is hard. And in most product inside of the country is 2 to 3x over cost. So for example, here, we just had a unit that asked us to source deep cold weather for them. The tops for level 7 equivalent cold weather was $700 in Ukraine. Inside of the United States, it was $300. So can we get that product over to you? Can we source it? Absolutely. We can help you budget it. And so that's a lot of what we do. We work with direct units that have a budget, are looking for help, and they don't understand how to get it. They don't understand what the price should be correctly so that they don't get screwed. And a lot of why we decided to do this was because, and when I first went over, there was so much of this happening where it was just misallocation of spending funds. And people that were actually taking advantage of these units because they just knew that money was flowing in, they are now starting to see all this new equipment. Hey, I can take advantage on these guys. Sure, I'm buying a plate carrier for $250, but for you it's $500, and that's just not right. So that's really what we shifted in gears and what we've been doing for the last 3 years.
Yeah, it does help the individual guy too. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, because sometimes it can come down to the squad level. Like, we can't get this through our supply chain. Yeah. Can you get us plates, or can you get us cold weather gear? Can you get, you know what I mean? It's just like,
and man, that pendulum is so large.
Exactly,
I mean, so large. For a long time, it was TQs because there were so many people that were donating tourniquets to Ukraine.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah,
they don't the populace doesn't understand the difference between a North American Rescue TQ and a $16 TQ on Amazon. Well, one breaks, and that's not good. So you had this influx of now super cheap TQs in the tens of thousands that flood in. And you watch a guy get 4 TQs put on his leg because you snap through 3 of them before you get to one that holds. And that's where the advisory role, I think, from a couple of us that do this for longevity now has come into play.
And what do like I said, when it comes to the plane aspect that we were talking about,
big birds,
big birds. Like, I mean, I don't even know I don't know if it's for Ukraine or not, but like, how do you?
They were originally.
Yeah. Like, how do you, I guess it might be simple too. How do you, for people just wondering, like, how do you move that, if you know?
Yeah, a lot of that now has kind of expanded just in the accessibility area of, hey, I know a guy, because it initially started with just the aspect of what I do of sales inside of the defense industry. Now it's gotten to the point where people know a little bit of what Project Leaflet does. And so they'll reach out to either myself directly or someone else and be like, hey, this is who we are. This is what we represent. This is what we sell. We have international channels. We have ITAR. We have exportation. We don't have connections, or we need help. And so, for example, with the 4 birds that just came in this week, it was something where we had an individual that represents that corporation. They were demilled birds, came from military. They were inspected. They were completely demilled so they can move through the whole globe. And then they were certified for FAA flight. The initial contract was for a country that was interesting in buying them. That order fell through, and so then it fell over to us. Hey man, I've got 4 birds. They need to fucking disappear.
I need to move these things. Yeah. I need to move. I want somebody to buy them.
And so then it comes on our play of like, hey, okay, cool. What's commission? What's the information on the bird? Give me all the feedback and all the data on it. We'll go work. And so then we do that. And so we've got access to obviously a fair amount of Blackhawks that come in on like a monthly basis. Rotary assets that come in. We have armored vehicles, everything from sedans up to 8x8s with 30 millimeters. And those are non-ITAR, so they can move globally. And then it goes all the way down to the lower aspects, which is if you just need some fucking cold weather socks, dog, I got you.
I got you. Yeah. We'll run to REI, send you, run some stuff over.
Yeah. But a lot of that ends up being, because I use the connections that I had through professional shooting or through working in the industry. The defense industry is small, just like just like any other thing that you're in, ski, snow, mountaineering. Yeah. The more that you're in the industry and working there and building relationships, you start to know people. And so that ended up being where I would have a lot of access to the corporations that were inside of the defense industry, whether it be Victos or G-Code or Faro Concepts or any of these companies that I've worked with that maybe they just have product that's sitting there that doesn't sell from 23 to 24 to 22. They want it gone. Or they want it gone at a lower than wholesale, or they'll give it for free. And so I try and use that network to bring in a lot of product too, because guys at war, bro, I don't give a fuck if it's a G code 1, 2, 3, or 4 Scorpion holder. Does it hold my AK-74 mag and does it retain it?
Yeah.
Cool. Like, let's go. Because they're just cycling through so much product as well.
Have you seen, because I know you worked with a few different companies, like, you know, we've been friends here for a few years. Have you seen a lot of these defense companies, or even like, say, you know, that are adapting to what's going on in Ukraine, like AK mag, AK mag holders, just chest rigs for AKs, like, you know, because back in the day it was like, hey, let's just use the old, you know,
not specific for mags like that,
but you know what I mean, like just for
you're seeing them adjust to, I would say, what we're seeing on a real battlefield space compared to how we were running in GWAT. Faro Concepts, you know, they're a great example of this. They're really close friends with Forward Observation Group, which I know those dudes over there, and you're seeing like Faro this year brought out a Juggernaut suit, full soft armor up the neck, big shoulder systems, cummerbund systems, almost like an IOTV, but more refined, more specialized in the way that it was designed, because you're now having these guys that are seeing these outcomes from 3 years of direct war conflict, and they're wanting to talk with manufacturers. Same thing with the Ukrainian manufacturers. When you look at some of the kit that's being designed over there, it's much different than, you know, slick cut plate carriers and high cuts and stuff like that. That's not a vibe in a fucking in war, man. It was a vibe in GWAT. But I can tell you the amount of friends that I've lost from fragmentation, not just metal, but wood, rock, is much greater than losing friends and being shot. And so I think that when you have manufacturing companies that are seeing what's happening on a true battlefield, they want to adjust slightly as well, because the U.S. market is obviously much different than what the global market is.
Yeah, because I've seen those too, where they're running the crotch protectors and all the other stuff. You know, like with stuff that we hated in the GWAT.
Oh yeah, everyone's fucking wearing one, dude.
Yeah. There was doing, I don't know what it was. I saw it on the video the other day. A few of them, like guys in this, and I think I might know what it is. It might be for getting guys out of a, like, I don't say medevac, but like they have like a panel on their back, but it like unfolds. And I was like, I don't know if it was for protection,
just under their butt.
It's kind of like not on their butt, but yeah, it was like on their back. But it's like, it looks like it's almost like meant for like a skid, or not a skid, but you know what I mean.
A big square.
Yeah, square,
like
but
flaps.
then it flat. Yeah, flat. Yeah.
It's just for mud. And,
okay.
Mud and water.
Okay, yeah, because it's like, well, I mean, like it's on their. You know, like I saw a guy running, but it looked like it was like, you know, like someone would lay on it. It was weird, you know, but it was like long. So I was like, well, that's weird, you know, but I'm wondering, I'm sure there's some.
Yeah, a lot of dudes wear those butt flaps because they just don't like sitting in mud.
Yeah.
And you know, it's a much different war than what.
Yeah.
Again, GWAT is a bad example of war. It just is.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, we got a lot of a good combat out of it, and I think it helped our defense manufacturing capabilities more than anything else. Because if you look at what troops look like when we went into GWAT compared to what troops look like when we left GWAT, technology went up a lot more.
Even the modernization.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Everything was different.
Everything looked different.
The weapons attachments that we were using are different. The carriers that we're running are different. Helmets are different.
Well, even like the units developed, like you said, the Stryker units developed. The I just talked with Mike Burke. He was a Ranger. He's like, they completely
we changed,
overhauled. You know, the Marine Corps. Yeah, they did all right. Marine Corps still like, you know, sledgehammering everything, but we got some better equipment, you know. But it was like, and you know, see SF and the tier 1 units kind of figure things a little bit out, you know, their budgets, their training, their missions, you know. And I mean, I agree, you know. But I think when it comes to full scale conventional, you know, who knows if we'll ever get another one. I'll probably eat my words here soon, but you know, like I know, like I said, the big talk of Iran right now, I've just been so disconnected trying to get other stuff that like I keep seeing this, and that's something you might be able to fill me in on. But you know, it's like, well, that's like another, I don't know if that would be GWAT 3.0 or something like that, but
we hope not.
I hope not. Yeah.
That's what we do as a country though, man.
Yeah.
War.
That's what we're good at.
Yeah, that's what we're good at. Which, you know, but that's why I think you see so many of those companies like trying to change a little bit.
Yeah. Well, like in the new ones that are coming up, like it was Anduril. I can't fucking their name. Anduril.
Yeah.
You know, like that's something that I'm like, they're getting.
Oh, they'll be
huge.
They are huge.
They are.
I think
huge.
They're building I think a multi-billion-dollar facility here in the United States.
Yeah. Because I mean, like what they're doing is like what we would be doing is like, let's make this light, make this cheaper, make it work. You know, and whereas, you know, the old Lockheeds and the Northrop Grummans are just they're slow. big expensive dinosaurs and they're slow. You know?
Just all of the U.S. will shift.
Yeah.
I think most of the world will probably shift.
Yeah. Because I mean, you see it even the Marine Corps shifted with their like their optics. Like all the infantry guys are running suppressors now. They're running the kits that they're running. They're
Everything's changed.
Focusing a lot more on tactics like squad tac. I mean, like you're getting the reps they're getting now just in infantry school. Like they're pumping money back into the Marines again. Like recon has become huge again. It was before, it died off when MARSOC got stood up. Now they're like, dude, they're fucking pipelined. Like,
and I think that'll continue to shift too, because now they're looking at what's happening in the Pacific region of around Taiwan. What is China doing with these guys? What is China focusing so hard on the drone application in Ukraine? What's happening in Ukraine? And we'll probably end up seeing shifts again inside of our militaries because they need to catch up or they need to start developing these platforms as well.
Yeah. And I think too is like we always like starting stuff in the Middle East, but it's like it's been a while since we've gone to the Asian Pacific.
Yeah, man, I know. Yeah. The Marines yearn for the sushi rolls.
Yeah, I know exactly, right? Yeah. I know. So we gotta get back into there, make us relevant again, But it was funny because I was like, man, especially in Iraq, I was like, why we always gotta start wars in these fucking shitholes? And I was like, why can't we do Europe? And then Ukraine kicks off, and I'm like, well, here we go.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Yeah, I was like, Eastern Europe, all right, I can mess with this. And then we went, and I was like, oh my god, this is great. Like especially on the embed trip, I was like,
the embed trip was good.
It's phenomenal. Like just going through almost the whole country, other than the South. It was like, oh, dude, that was. I was like, yeah, all right. Like, why can't we start a war here? Why can't we get involved? Like, why can't guys be happy? Start Europe all over again, but World War II stuff. But yeah, man, it's wild. So, I mean, what do you see then for kind of the future of Leaflet? Kind of even the future is like moving forward. We can talk about like the world, but business, and then journalism and
I mean, for Leaflet, for me, this isn't going to stop. Obviously I'm pretty involved with the conflict now, being a part of Chosen Company and working with some other units. For me, whether it's whether the U.S. continues to involve themselves or not, we're in this until the end. That's kind of what we do. Whether it's here or Israel or if we have friends in need and friends that need equipment, we're going to provide. The journalism side of it, for me, I don't know if that was ever really my full blown focus. I think it was something that kind of took off and helped grow what I do. Obviously there's a lot of I guess there's like a lot of connectivity between the two now.
Well, there's a lot of value in that network.
Yeah,
even if
and trust
and trust. Too,
the trust gets built a lot because. I think for Nick and I, for example, we get a lot of guys that are willing to reach out to us to tell their story because they know we're not going to fuck them or change it. Maybe we've had some really hard articles that came out through New York Times that we had to go back and forth and argue with people. Nick and I are we've never burned a bridge. We've never lied to anybody in regards to the units that we work with. We've never changed their stories. And so we have this rapport with, I think, a lot of units that gives us a lot of trust and the ability to embed quite deeply. So for me, I don't know if I would ever could let that off with Project Leaflet. I love the aspect of it, and I'm looking for more people to come in and help with the Discord and help report. V's been with me for a year now, and nobody knows who he is because we keep him so secret. But I think I would like to see it. Maybe Embed was a great kickoff point of what I thought was like, man, this is something that's wow. This could be a TV show. People care what we do, and so that was something that kind of opened my eyes a little bit more in regards to what's able and what's possible out there. So it'd be cool to see if maybe that could be taken to a larger platform like a Hulu or a YouTube and. Someone, if anyone would like to give us money to go back to conflict zones,
I'll look at this camera.
We would really fucking love that.
It won't be called that, but we can do whatever you would call it.
I have camera willing to go into war zones.
Yeah, exactly. I got a day rate. I'm willing to negotiate. That's every time you guys call me like we're going. I'm like I would love to. I'd love to.
I mean we're going. I think next month.
Next month. Yeah. I always tell my wife's like, all right, if the money's there. It's like she's like, okay, money there, and that's where it is for me. It's
my wife's just like, don't die. Like, and I'm like, well, I'm going.
I know, yeah, you guys are going. I don't know. Are you heading out? Do you guys have a set date yet?
Yeah. So tentatively, we're looking at the 2nd. I don't want to like give a lot of details.
No. Yeah, but
just because
I think I'm in Scotland.
Yeah. Well, and I don't want like, I don't need to be targeted by the Russians more than I already am.
Yeah.
But yeah, the goal is to head out. I think be there for a couple of weeks, and this would be like a really, really deep,
in-depth way.
like a really deep embed. We've got some units that are willing to like let us be on first line, second line trench systems, fuck around with some drones, drive some tanks and pop some rounds. Like, so I think this would be a really good trip where I'm like, okay, this is a solidification of like. I haven't done it once. I haven't done it twice. This would probably be my 5th or 6th trip spin now over there. Just seeing where it can go, man.
Yeah.
Like I love doing the logistics side of it, but like, telling people stories, there's something special about that. When they're able to open up and trust you and then really tell you something that they've never really even told even some of their friends or there's something about that it's very magical.
There's a lot of respect there, and that's what was awesome going with embed. And I think when we all went over, like the Ukrainians really respect that with the war fighters that came from the GWAT, because they watched us in the GWAT, and now they're guys
they're young dudes.
They're young dudes, and then they're
some of them fought with us.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Some fought, and then they're just like, even the guys fighting now are like, thanks for coming over. Like, just the war fighter. They're just like, they know you're there to like tell their story in the proper way.
Well, and remember, third Assault Brigade, when we went to Only Wars, every single one of those motherfuckers was wearing a U.S. flag.
Yeah, exactly.
And their whole entire point was because to give things back of how much support and how much training and how much effort. There's an equalization there that they see eye to eye, and they realize it. Like, they're not shy to that. They're very open and honest about it.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Yeah. So I think there is something respect wise to that.
Do you see anything kicking off in the future here? Anything in your intel chats or anything? Potential big I mean, not in Ukraine, but just in generalities, that people feel things shifting and
it's. I mean, supposedly there's supposed to be a big summer assault from Ukraine. Who knows?
Yeah.
I don't think that conflict will stop.
Yeah.
But it's weird when you're so in depth or so entwined to like the news. I have conversations with my wife, and she's just like, "Man, it just seems like the world is like really angry right now." And you're like, "Yeah, the whole fucking world's at war. It's not. You can say it's not, but like, it's not exactly a peaceful place. Georgia's looking at becoming a 2.0 of Ukraine. They're not happy with their government, which is Russian backed.
Yeah. The government, Russia's weak right now. Now, if they're going to do something, now's the time to do it.
Absolutely. And speaking of that, the second biggest legion inside of Ukraine is a Georgian legion.
Speaking of Viking, how is he doing?
Well, Viking's part of Chosen right now.
Is he still doing Chosen? Yeah.
Okay, he's a little. I love Viking. That dude's he's a ball energy.
I love him. Yeah.
And he'll go. Where he's your typical Georgian. He'll go wherever he can kill Russians.
Yep. Exactly. Yep.
So I think when you see that, you see Taiwan freaking out so much about what's happening with China. You see Israel conducting the operation that they're doing and pushing heavily. I doubt that's going to stop.
Yeah.
You see the U.S. truly freaked out a little bit about the Indo-Pacific, and they're also paying attention to what's happening with Russia and Ukraine. You see France and Macron talking about putting troops in ground in Ukraine as well. The EU is now picking up support because the U.S. is talking about backing down support. So all of those channels are spinning up. Yeah, man. I think it's unfortunately it is a stressful time, and it's unknown. I think what will happen in the near future, because there's so many matches, in my opinion, that are like already pulled out. They're lined up, and it's like, well, which one is gonna
go next?
Yeah, which one's gonna ignite next?
Yeah. Especially with like the EU stuff and the UN stuff, like Lithuania, Estonia. Those guys they could drop overnight because they don't have much of a support.
They don't have much going on. They can go into conflicts immediately.
Yeah.
I think the U.S.
They're
population.
UN, NATO, but You know,
Yeah, but countries can still do things on their own. Like they don't have to inflict all of NATO.
No. What I'm saying is, like, if Russia invades, it's going to be gonna be rough. That's what I'm saying. It's gonna be rough for them. Like that match could be lit real fucking fast. You know.
Sure.
You know, even though they're focusing on Ukraine, if like Russia's like, fuck it, let's ball. You know, I don't foresee it happening because I think people overestimate Russia's capabilities right now.
That
you know,
and I think the U.S. I don't know what's the best way of putting it. I think the U.S. Media does a good job at propping up Russia to be in a better position than what it is.
Exactly. No, I agree with you. Because if you dig a little bit deeper, like because I hear it all the time because I listen to the political commentators like, wow, I was like. They're like, well, I knew Russia would be like, no. You don't understand what's going on the ground. Like, you don't really, truly understand what's happening. Like, Russia is scraping by.
Yeah, and they're not, I personally think they need an off-ramp a lot more than Ukraine does. Mm-hmm. Russia's spending a lot of their GDP to keep this going.
Mm-hmm. Well, also their munition. They're like, oh, they've ramped up their war economy. They're not churning out shit. I mean, that's the commentary on it.
Right,
that show that they think they're not in a strong position.
No, they're also one of the most trade embargoed countries out there right now. They're not getting a lot of stuff happening with them. If China decides to stop supporting them fully, they would really run into a problem.
Yeah.
Most of their armored vehicles have been destroyed through the first initial wars, and getting them. The other one's upgraded. That is
or
harder
even
to
running
do.
for that matter.
And Ukraine, it's just like tactics. When you look at, for example, I was speaking with a company commander that I used to serve with a little while ago, and he would say, it's a 3-to-1 tactic. If you take a building and you throw a company size element into it, technically it's going to take about 3 times the element to dig that element out. If you ask them to go and assault and get them out. So now you look at Ukraine and you look at Russia. So that is a hard dig, and Ukraine is not what they were in 2014, and Ukraine is not what they were when this war kicked off as well in 22. They are smart, they've advanced, they've learned, they've dug fucking massive amount of defensive lines. Russia started off this engagement was owning 17% of the country. They got all the way up to 27%. Now they're back down to around 20% of holding of Ukrainian land. You've had the poorest country in EU invade you in Kursk for almost an entire year. You finally are getting that back only by allowing North Korea to come in and take some pressure off of your troops. It's just not like it's not going swell. For Russia, and I'm not going to say that it's going swell for Ukraine. They've been invaded for the last fucking 3 years, but I think it's a different picture than what gets painted a lot of the time.
No, I agree.
Because Ukraine has this ability to kind of pause and wait. They can have support that comes in from around the globe, and digging Ukraine out, and I think thinking that Russia is going to be able to push back and take all of Ukraine is obviously, in my opinion, you're living in fantasy land a little bit, and it's going to be a weird next year because I think people that expected Trump to come in and be able to fix this very quickly, I don't know if that's going to be the case, because Ukraine wants something out of this as well. They were fucked when they gave up their nukes. They were fucked when they gave up their long range bombers. They were fucked when they lost Crimea, and now you're saying that they should be fucked a fourth time in regards to this war and how it should end. So I don't know. It's going to be weird to see if Putin wants to agree with something, if Zelensky wants to agree with something, and I think Trump's kind of in the middle of it right now, saying, "Well, I can't get either of them to agree to something."
You saw that play out in the last 2 weeks after the talks, and Ukraine agreed to a bunch of stuff, and so Trump was happy, and then Putin but he was like, "No, I don't want it," and then he's like, "Well, Zelensky agreed."
And he's like, "So end this war."
Yeah, so after their spat, they fought Zelensky and Trump, and then Zelensky's okay, we'll agree, and now you see Trump come and be like, "Well, fuck Putin." And so he's he slowly started inching back towards Ukraine, and then
it's a weird thing,
a lot of people were mad, and they're like, well, why are you mad? It's if Putin doesn't want to give up, you might as well, who are you going to side with? The Russians? No,
Yeah, and this has been going on a lot longer than we've been around.
Yeah, exactly.
And the Russians have always kind of looked down on Ukraine. If you've read through some of the history books, and it's always been called Little Russia and stuff because they think it should be absorbed into them. So I don't know where this will end, and I just don't think the world will ever, thinking the world is going to have peace. I think that's a.
Well, even look beyond these. I mean, you start looking into Africa, you start looking at everything else. So like, look at Iran. Like Iran's fueling shit, and people.
Why is Wagner back down in Africa again? Africa Corp.
Yeah, exactly.
They're doing the same exact thing that they were before.
Yep. And then even with, like I said, I keep bringing up Iran. Everyone's freaking out about Iran right now. And like, I don't know if the U.S. plans to do anything or if it's just something that
U.S.
like
is putting a lot of planes down to.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so you're like, well, I don't think they're going to invade, but who knows?
No, but that also affects, Ukrainian talk because Trump's putting all these bombers down there expecting Iran to give up their nuclear capability or nuclear testing. And Russia's also looking back at that saying, well, if you bomb the shit out of Iran, it's not going to be good in relations with us. That's one of our allies.
Yeah.
I think the world right now is in a confusing place.
Yeah, and I think the OSINT, now everybody knows. I think it's always been that way, but no one knew about it. And I think that's why say your wife feels like everything's on fire. You're like, well, it's always been on fire. I think you're just finally
now it's more public.
More public, I mean, look at all the like Angolan wars and like the Bush War in Rhodesia and all the fight going on, Civil War. Like
but a lot of that was hidden for so long.
80s, 90s. Yeah, the FARC. You know about the Colombian Wars and the FARC. It's
or you had someone from maybe like PBC that went down there and did a war documentary. And,
exactly.
That's how you found out about it. But now you have people that are specifically like, like the way that I'm addicted with Ukraine. Yeah. They're maybe addicted with what's happening in Mali or somewhere else, and so that's all
Syria.
they report on.
About Syria again. I mean, that's going to pop off again. That is 1,000% going to pop off again. It's just a matter of time. Everyone's talking about the new president. Like, dude, he ain't. That's old Al Qaeda, buddy. Like that's gonna go sideways.
The world's in a weird place, man.
Yeah, it's gonna go sideways. Everyone's like, no, like we get what you're doing, no. And then this rumor is about the Taliban because I was texting you and a few others and Nick. And I'm like, look, man, like if it's true, Taliban want legitimacy, So if letting troops in on the ground into Bagram, Taliban want legitimacy.
Yeah, Russia was just giving them legitimacy. Yeah, they were trying to have a trade agreement and a speaking agreement.
China tried doing it right away too. Yeah, I mean, there was Chinese workers on the ground within 48 hours after we left, and I had direct lines with Afghans on the ground. Be like, China just dropped off a bunch of Asian looking people got dropped off.
What are they doing here?
At Bagram, yeah, exactly. They plane flew in. It's not working, obviously. Like we know people, I know enough about Afghanistan. It's like, dude, you talk about Wild West. The Taliban don't control Afghanistan.
Yeah. Like, it's all
tribal, like it's extreme ISIS. There's multiple ISIS, and then like Taliban's fighting ISIS, and then it's all over the place. And then it's pumping money, but now their money's gone.
Yeah, from the U.S. side.
From the U.S. side, which by the way, we were giving them substantial amount of money. So now that's why, to me, if that rumor is true that we went into Bagram, is 100% they're trying to play ball to get some money.
Well, they're all denying it, but we'll see.
We'll find out in the next 48 hours what happens.
Yeah, exactly.
That's why I texted. I was like, "Who wants to go to Afghanistan?" I texted you. I texted John, Nick. John's like, "What? What's going on?" I was like, "Well, if you want to go, now's the time."
Yeah, and like to me, I look at all this as a much different view because people get so emotional out of all of it, and I'm very level-headed where I'm like, do you have to understand that we are like the Republic from Star Wars?
Yeah,
we make war equipment more than anything else in this country, and we do proxy wars and we do lend-lease programs, and that's how we make money. We don't make bananas. We don't want to do that, dog. We make Bradleys, we make fucking M1A1s, M1A2s, and we make fucking Tomahawks, and you're going to buy them.
Yeah, and you will use them.
You will fucking use them.
And we will resupply you.
Yeah, exactly. That's what we do. And, I have that conversation with so many people on my channels where I'm like, dude, you're living in your fantasy world. Like, like all this fucking humanitarian shit that you like love and like, yeah, that's great. It's cool to do that. But motherfucker, we're selling JDAMs.
We got quotas to meet.
Yeah, and it's you look at Israel, for example. I had this conversation with a couple people where they were like, "Well, we have this pier and we're providing supplies and it's doing great." And I'm like, "Yeah, we're gonna give a fuck about that for like 6 months."
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, that $138 million fucking pier
and
that
it fell
did.
apart. It broke. Nothing happened.
That was my point. My point was like, we will absolutely do that.
Yeah.
But on the flip side, we're gonna sell a $60 billion aid package of arms.
Yeah.
So over here is our good. We did good job. We care.
Yeah.
Here's the other bombs that we're gonna continue cycling cycling over there because that's what we actually do as a country.
Yeah.
And that's not going to change, man.
No, I agree. I agree. I think that's one of the things, like, when we talk about in generalities, like, man, war's always consistent. You know, it's always there. You know, I think that's why it's like the war fighter and the warrior is always one of the most, if not the most consistent thing inside cultures. You know, that's highly respected because conflict is always there.
Oh, it's human nature.
It's human nature.
Yeah,
like
we
it
want to kill
always
each other.
yeah. And well, it's always protection too. It's like even if you don't, someone's going to push you into a conflict, and you don't want to be pushed into a conflict. And so you have to know what you need to do. You know, so I think that's like one of those things where it's like it's just always consistent. It's always you know, there's always a war somewhere to fight. You know,
Yeah, it's not going away. It's
not
human
going
nature.
away. Yeah, I think we're just like said more aware of it. You know, and whatnot. So this is what it is.
Yeah, unfortunately. Unfortunately.
Yeah. Anything else, bro? Any other big news?
Man. No, I mean, that's, you know, getting really the trip back and going. That's been a big thing. You know, working constantly with Chosen has been kind of the focus. Just kind of not stopping and trying to figure out just how to keep it pushing forward. And that's been really the big thing. You know, I watch all these other people. They're just kind of getting tired, and you know we've all been in it for a while now. Either doing OSINT or support channels, and it's hard to keep it going. So yeah, man, it's just a constant grind of what's next.
All right, so if people want to buy helicopters or planes from you, where do they find you?
Just bring out the A-Team theme.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, I need weapons, I need planes.
If you're looking to get a hold of us, you can reach out to the Project Leaflet at gmail.com. My personal Instagram is of Blood and Steel. The rest of our channels are just Project Leaflet. You can reach out to us for anything you need, whether it's just talking about what's going on in the world, whether you want to come work for us and report, whether you want to help us out on our Discord channels, or if you have some donations that you want to reach out to us and get them to a specific unit, man, we'll never turn away anything like that. We're pretty easy to find now.
Fuck yeah. Awesome. Thanks for coming on, bro.
Yeah, man. Thank you for everything.